This is a hybrid meeting of the City Council. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8, the city's website, and YouTube. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 *.
Se ofrecen servicios de interpretación en español para esta reunión del Consejo Municipal por teléfono. Marque el número 720-386-9023 y utilice el código 104091 #.
City Clerk is the host of the Zoom meeting. Speakers will be able to unmute themselves when recognized. This time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask the City Clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Huseman?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas?
Present.
Councilmember Madera?
Present.
Councilmember Davis?
Present.
Councilmember Noble?
Present.
Councilmember Hurst?
Present.
Councilmember Grimes?
Present.
Councilmember Ford?
Present.
Councilmember Douglas?
Present.
Mayor Huseman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We are all present. This time, is there a motion and a second to amend the agenda to make consideration of Ordinance 2379 the next item on the agenda?
Could you please clarify, Mr. Mayor, which is 2379?
2379 is the ordinance that was carried over from our last meeting concerning Metro District regulations in the city of Commerce City.
I'll make that motion.
Councilmember Madera,
Second.
I have a motion and a second to make considerations of Ordinance 2379 the next item on the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 8-1. We will get to that ordinance after we do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This item was continued from the May 2nd, 2022 meeting. The ordinance is not ready for council action, and staff is asking council to continue the ordinance. This time, is there a motion and a second to continue Ordinance 2379 to May 23rd, 2022? Councilmember Grimes?
So moved.
Councilmember Madera?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue Ordinance 2379 to May 23rd, 2022. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble?
No. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, once again, I have a motion and a second to continue Ordinance 2379 to May 23rd, 2022. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion will carry unanimously. We'll now move on to citizen communication. All public comment will occur during citizen communication, except for public hearings. Persons who registered to speak under multiple items will be allowed to speak multiple times. Per council policy, citizen communication is the time on our agenda for the public to address council on business and affairs of the city. The City Council is not able to hear any comments at this time on land use matters that are before or may come before council. Please reserve such comments for the appropriate public hearing. As a reminder, we take your comments seriously, but do not generally respond to comments until later in the evening. Council must wait until administrative council business to take action in response to citizen communication. Council members can ask questions of speakers if desired. The city needed advanced registration in order to participate virtually in citizen communication for this meeting. If you are currently in the Zoom meeting to speak during citizen communication, please listen for me to call your name and the clerk will unmute you so you may begin. If you do not respond or are disconnected, you may miss your chance to comment. Those attending in person to speak during citizen communication will be called upon after virtual comment has concluded. Please give your name and address for the record and keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. If a council member wants to ask a question, please ask to be recognized when the speaker is finished. This evening, we're going to start with David Yost, who wants to speak twice, first on general citizen communication and second on resolution 2022-59.
David, you should be able to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Thank you. Can I get resolution, what'd you say it was? 2239?
2022-59.
And can you refresh me on what that is? I'm sorry. Is that the CAMAN?
No, Mr. Yost, that is the resolution extending the Comprehensive Plan Citizens Advisory Committee.
I have no comment on that. Thank you.
Mr. Yost, you signed up to speak under general citizen communication. Do you have comments for council tonight?
I do. I have, I just want to speak on behalf of CAMAN and the 112th and Highway 2.
Mr. Yost, I have to stop you right there. This is a land use case that is going to be heard before the city council, and we cannot hear your comments at this time. If you wish to comment on that case, you need to register to speak during the public hearing for that case.
Gotcha.
Did you have additional comments you wish to make?
None then.
Thank you. We'll move on to Steve Douglas.
Steve, you should be able to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just have a couple comments here. One is has to do with at the golf course in the golf shop. If there's any way that they could put the TV back in there for the golfers that come in, and maybe because of technology now, they can run a banner that gives information about the golf course, because they're going to start shutting some of the course down for irrigation repairs. And that would be great for people to know what's going on. It could just be a consistent banner with information. You know, plus you want to get the golfers excited when they get in there and look around to buy stuff. The second one is there's been a lot of traffic Parkside North, and right now they're getting ready to build out tri-point homes on Parkside North and Unity Parkway between Unity Parkway and Landmark Drive on Parkside North Drive. There's been a lot of increase of traffic, mainly because of the park use, and then also construction traffic, and those big trucks are driving really fast. So if there's any way that you guys could have an indicator out there to test the speed throughout the week or so, and maybe end up putting a stop sign there or something, so at least the people traveling through there would stop for the folks who are trying to get to the park. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Does anybody on council have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, we thank you for your time this evening. Okay, for general citizen communication for people who are present, we'll start with Richard Frank.
I don't wish to speak tonight. I will next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Next up will be Jennifer Tanaka.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. All of us on behalf of Ordinance 2379 today are withdrawing our public comment right now, and we will come back next week when it's been rescheduled.
Thank you. Next will be Zach Bishop. Okay. Zachary White. Christy Pollard. Kyle Thomas. Ted Lady. Okay, that's all we have for citizen communication, for general citizen communication. Thank you for speaking with us tonight. If follow-up is necessary, you should expect to be contacted by a staff member. Members of the public were also able to submit comments online and by mail. No written comments were submitted by the deadline. If anyone wishes to speak at a future council meeting, please check the meeting agenda and city website for information on how to register or submit written comments. Next, we're going to move to proclamations. We have one for Public Works Week. Mr. Gibson, will you please read the proclamation?
Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as streets and bridges, drainage, public buildings, fleet, and solid waste and recycling management, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of this infrastructure, as well as the associated planning, design, and construction, are vitally dependent upon efforts and skills of public works staff, and whereas the efficiency and qualified and dedicated public works department personnel is materially influenced by their attitude and understanding of the importance of the work that they perform. Now, therefore, the City Council of Commerce City proclaims the week of May 15th through 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Weeks in Commerce City. Be it further proclaimed that we call upon all citizens to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works personnel make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. This time, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Grimes.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation declaring Public Works Week in Commerce City. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble.
I was going to second it, but on the other hand, I could take this opportunity to thank our Public Works Department for all they do, and I'm glad we'll be celebrating them all month. We should celebrate them all year as well.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just along those same lines, just wanted to thank all the employees that work for the Public Works Department and all the hard work that they do for the city of Commerce City, so thank you.
Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, I'd like to echo the same thoughts. We couldn't function without Public Works, and I know that a lot of people in the Public Works Department, and they work so hard, and so I'm glad that we are taking this opportunity to acknowledge that hard work, so thank you.
I see no other requests for discussion. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, and non-controversial. They are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight, there are 3 items listed under the consent agenda. Does anybody on council wish to remove an item off of the consent agenda? Councilmember Noble.
Resolution 2022-61.
Okay. Anybody else on council wish to remove an item off the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Will the clerk please read the titles?
Resolution 2022-59, a resolution extending the Comprehensive Plan Citizens Advisory Committee. Resolution 2022-62, a resolution authorizing the extension of interim city attorney employment agreement.
Thank you, sir. We'll do a roll call vote.
Your vote is open. Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Can you hit your button, sir?
Motion carries unanimously. Councilmember Noble, you requested to pull Resolution 2022-61. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just wanted clarification as to this resolution, because it seems like a very logical thing to be doing, but it also seems like something we should have been doing for the last few decades. So if you could give me some information about it.
Certainly. So the city has received an appeal from a decision of the director in a particular matter that is not a matter that typically goes to council or can be referred up to council. It's an administrative decision. Under the Land Development Code, the applicant is afforded the opportunity to appeal that decision, and the review then goes to the Planning Commission and the City Council under the particular procedures on appeal, or excuse me, under the appeal section of Land Development Code. And then within section 21-3445, there's a section called Procedures on Appeal, which states the appellate bodies are authorized to adopt rules or procedure as they deem appropriate for proper administration of appellate matters. So in order to give the applicant, in this case, due process and fair notice of what the procedures would be, and in sufficient time in advance of that hearing, we're putting a resolution in front of you to go ahead and set those procedures so that the parties know what to expect and everyone's due process rights are provided. Rarely do we have appeals of administrative decisions. I have no idea when the last one was, but I know it certainly has not been during the 5.5 years that I've been employed with the city. So this is really to make sure everyone knows what's going forward. And then because the code allows for the bodies are authorized to adopt all rules of procedure, that does mean that the Planning Commission could vary or do something slightly different from this resolution. But I think that would most likely be doubtful given the comprehensiveness of the resolution and what we would expect on appeal.
So this establishes the procedures for the appeal?
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2022-61. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2022-61. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, Mr. Gibson, will you please read the title?
Resolution 2022-61, a resolution of the City Council of Commerce City adopting rules of procedure for appeals of a decision by the Community Development Director.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2022-61. The title has been read. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're going to move on to our public hearings this evening. First public hearing is for Resolution 2022-31, Ordinance AN-260-22, Ordinance Z-971-21-22 for the Eberly Place annexation and zoning. We'll remind council to use the public hearing only to ask questions, but not to express opinions or indicate how you will vote. Council members are not to provide testimony if you wish to participate in the decision. You're to rely only on facts developed in this hearing and in the record and apply those facts to the criteria in the Land Development Code. Per Council Policy Number 22, the mayor has the authority to limit testimony to a reasonable length of time to maintain reasonable equity of time for all positions on an issue. Mr. Hayter, would you like to address council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Mayor, council, at this time, I'd like to ask the following. Is there any council member who cannot hear this matter and make a determination fairly and impartially based on the record before you and the facts and evidence as developed at this public hearing? Will the record reflect that no member of council has indicated an inability to be fair and impartial on this matter? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hayter. At this time, I will open the public hearing and invite Andrew Baker, City Planner, to make the press staff presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Good evening, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Andrew Baker, and on behalf of the Community Development Department, I will be presenting the Eberly Place annexation and PUD applications here this evening. This project is located at the address 10070 Potomac Street. The applicant is Daniel R. Sheldon of UDC Miller LLC, now outdated, and their new company's name is Miller United. The request is an annexation and a subsequent zoning to planned unit development. Quick disclaimer, this presentation, along with the case file and all annexation zoning regulations, are entered into the public record. This property is located, well, is not located in the city of Commerce City quite yet, though all notification and posting requirements have been met. Therefore, the City Council has jurisdiction to hear this case. In accordance with the City of Commerce City Land Development Code, annexation and PUD applications are reviewed by the DRT. Public Planning Commission then holds a public hearing and provides a recommendation, and we are here tonight for City Council to hold a public hearing and make a final decision to approve with conditions, or deny this application. The annexation case before you does meet all 12 of the criteria within the Annexation Act eligibility listed on these two slides. And the request, as I mentioned before, is an annexation along with the zoning of an Adams County property from ADCO A3, which is Agricultural 3, to Commerce City Planned Unit Development. This project is 33.5 acres in size. The comprehensive plan designation is residential medium, which allows single-family residential development at a density of 4 to 8 dwelling units per acre. Property is to be re-subdivided into 154 lot residential subdivision. Sorry for the typo there. And there are 2 planning areas proposed, one of which would allow duplexes and single-family detached homes, and the other only allowing single-family detached. The applicant is also applying for the Northern Infrastructure General Improvement District inclusion, which is to be approved by the Council and NIGID Board at a later date. Here's an aerial view of the site. It is currently mostly vacant with a single-family home on the property accessed from Potomac Street on the west side. As I had mentioned, the comprehensive plan designates this area as residential with a medium density, as is most of the surrounding area as well. The Reunion and Foxton Village PUDs border this property on 3 sides. Those are also single-family residential planned unit developments with a similar density and uses. We also have a final plat and a PUD development permit, which are currently under administrative review in the city. And as I mentioned, there's an NIGID application involved as well. Here's a quick look at the annexation map. You can see that it's bordered on 3 sides by the city of Commerce City. The proposed PUD has a cover sheet and legal description along with the project summary and an intent, as we see in most of these zone documents. Page 3 provides community design elements such as location of entryways, pedestrian and road connections, parks, open space, drainage, and the location of the historic Cactus Ridge Schoolhouse. This is a graphic showing some of the PUD items that were mentioned in the slide before. We have all of the proposed pedestrian connections shown here, which will be included along all rights of way, as well as some mid-block connections that would be connecting both the Foxton Village neighborhood into this development, along with moving pedestrians through to the public parks, which have been denoted by the stars on this graphic. You also see some enhanced entryways that would have different signage and some enhanced landscaping for those main entrances into the project. Page 4 includes a PUD zoning land use chart as well as a PUD zoning map. That'll show those two planning areas that I mentioned before. Again, one of which allowing single-family detached and duplexes, and then the other allowing only single-family detached. This is meant to act as a transition between the different densities found in adjacent neighborhoods. This page also ensures that 3% of the site will be utilized for private parks, which is in line with our own regulations in the Commerce City Land Development Code. And to look at the graphic at those two planning areas, which I have mentioned, planning area A as allowing both the duplexes and the single family detached, which transition from the higher densities that we see in our Union Ridge over to just single family detached in planning area B, compatible and comparable with the Foxton Village development. One other note that I would like to make, not only does the proposed density meet that is found in the comprehensive plan. We also have the private parks that are denoted as part of the requirements here, but we also have open space, drainage facility, and trails. I'll talk about that drainage facility in just a little bit, but you can see the potential location for that, and really it's fairly concrete, the location of that detention facility in the southwest corner of the project. Pages 5 and 6 of the proposed PUD discuss bulk standards, which talk about things such as lot size and width, minimums, maximum setbacks for both planning areas. Here's a look at some of those which I have described. Just want to reiterate that both planning areas A and B, while they have separate standards, are separated into the land uses that are shown. So here in planning area A, we have single family detached with both front and rear loaded garage as well as duplexes, different standards that are allowed for each of those. While in planning area B, we would only have those single family detached uses. Page 7 shows some lot typicals, which would describe how these different uses could work and could fit on the minimum lot size areas that are depicted as well within the PUD. This is helpful just to make sure that the overall urban design as well as utility access can be achieved with the proposed dimensions and bulk standards. The proposed development plan has been illustrated into the graphic here. As I had mentioned, that development plan includes 154 homes, which is reiterated within this graphic. And so you can see the central park, which does take up about 1 acre and does meet the minimum 3% requirement for private parks in this PUD. And then the pocket parks that you see on the east side, which both act as a connection and a buffer to the neighbors next door, but also increase that private park area to up to almost, I believe, 10%. So we are greatly exceeding the city's requirements as far as private parked, landscaped, amenitized areas within this development. Staff distributed the requested zone change and annexation applications for review to all the relevant referral agencies, including utility companies, the fire district, and internal city departments. The DRT does not have any concerns with the proposed zone change or the annexation proposed today. This PUD zoning is appropriate for the site as it is consistent with the Commerce City Comprehensive Plan designation for the property. Most of the discussion over the review period took place around traffic improvements, the alignment of East 100th Avenue and the collector street that is shown on the master transportation plan, as well as other public improvements related to the drainage area. Just as a quick note, the drainage pond that is being proposed for this development at a later date will be dedicated to the city, expanded upon, and then turned into a regional drainage facility. As of right now, with these plans, the drainage pond would only serve this development, and the maintenance and the future construction of that regional drainage way has been and is continuing to be negotiated with the annexation and development agreements for this site. Mile High Flood District was an integral part of those decisions and helped us work with the applicant on creating those plans. The approval of this zone change will help implement the community vision for the area as established by the comprehensive plan by providing a medium-density residential development in an Adams County enclave, a great infill development connecting multiple Commerce City neighborhoods. The project approval will also fund needed public improvements to the area, in specific those drainage and traffic matters that I had discussed earlier. We had a neighborhood meeting on September 29th, 2021. We also discussed off-site traffic concerns in that, especially left turns onto 104th Avenue. It was explained that with the development of this project and a couple others, those would create the necessary connections that are needed for folks that already live out there to have better access to those collector drives that would provide left-hand turns onto 104th Avenue. We discussed project financing, construction impact mitigation, home pricing and construction, general city and school plans, specifically the capacity that those services can handle, as well as the infrastructure improvements that we've discussed as well. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, all the required public notification has occurred. We sent postcards to property owners within 500 feet of this property, and that included 130 adjacent property owners notified. We published a notice in the Commerce City Sentinel local newspaper, as well as posted 3 signs on the property. One public comment letter has been received by staff as of May 2nd, 2022. I'm going to go fairly quickly through the different criteria here. Please feel free to slow me down or ask questions later if you want to discuss one of these criteria in particular. I can tell you that all of the annexation approval criteria that have been listed here have been found to be met by the development review team, as in the annexation being in compliance with all state laws and the LDC, being consistent with the comprehensive plan, and in the best interest of the city. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to provide a piece of clarification. The attached PUD zone document identified as Exhibit B in your packet material is the inaccurate PUD zone document for tonight's discussion. I would like to enter into the record supplemental to that is the accurate PUD zone document, which has been referenced by Mr. Baker during your presentation, that provides the breakout for both Planning Area A and Planning Area B. You'll find in your materials that the PUD zone document dated April 29th of 2021 only shows Planning Area A. The appropriate PUD zone document related to your discussion tonight is dated January 28th, 2022, with the reference Planning Areas B, A, and B, and the various land use and development standards outlined before you tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Jason.
Can you clarify for me, the information in our packet is not accurate, but the information that Mr. Baker presented was accurate?
That is correct.
Given that information, does anybody on council wish to make a motion at this time? Councilmember Noble?
I don't have a motion to make, but we received all of these agenda items. There were 65 documents for the variety of things we'll be hearing tonight, late Friday afternoon. And some of us actually spend time going through them. So to be getting inaccurate information in our packets and at the last minute is particularly disturbing to me. Please tell us what the differences are between the packets that we received on late Friday afternoon and the material that was shown tonight.
So Andrew, please pick me up where I may misstep, but what you find as, I would say, the only deficiency as it relates to the materials is the PUD zone document itself, so that is Exhibit B. In Exhibit B, that is attached to the agendized item, you will only denote one planning area for the entirety of the 33.5 acres.
And that actually is a relevant issue because I was looking at the neighborhood meeting, and there was the Norris Company said that there would be no multifamily, and in fact there is.
With respect to the PUD zone document that is attached to the agendized item and the one that is contemplated for inclusion or to supplement tonight's discussion, planning area A and B, or planning area A only made reference to single-family detached and potentially attached product. Attached product does not include multifamily, nor does the PUD land use summary on sheet 4 of 5 within what's attached in on your agendized item. With respect to the document that is being entered in for supplementation, is that planning area A and B, to the points that were raised by Mr. Baker, still would only allow single-family detached or attached uses. It would not allow multifamily.
So attached is a reference to a duplex or a paired home, and those are not considered multifamily?
Correct. When we think about multifamily, we think about it from the vertical stacking of units, either condominiums, apartments. When we think about single-family attached, we think about townhomes, row houses, things of that nature. They are joined horizontally by walls, but not vertically like what we have clarified or defined within our land development code.
Interesting. I would imagine that someone might not necessarily know that if they were at the neighborhood meeting, the difference between multifamily and a duplex. Could you direct me to the land development code number for the description of attached?
Yes, I'd have to pull up the land development code. It is identified within our definition section of the land development code. So if you'll bear with me to pull up that section for you. But we also do identify, just for further clarification, single-family detached, attached, and also duplexes, which is its own categorization of a residential land use, which is paired housing.
Councilmember Madera.
So if we don't have the correct PUD in our packet, then can we even approve PUD that's not in the packet?
Yes, sir, if you are willing to accept the supplement that's being entered into the file. Once again, you still can continue the item if you do not feel comfortable as a body of having had the pertinent information before you, but there's nothing stopping you from accepting the supplement of the accurate PUD zone document and taking action tonight.
I'll make a...
If I may, sir, what I would say is that if council so chose to want to do that, to still take action on it tonight, and I've got Matt staring over my shoulder, he can correct me if I'm wrong, you could always continue this item to later in the meeting to allow for staff to make copies of this, to be able to have it for you and also for the general public at the table, so that everybody is working from the same baseline of information. But once again, that is a choice of council and legal counsel.
And the applicant also wants to make sure that you have the full information before you and the record is accurate. And they have reflected that if you so desire, they'd be willing to continue these cases, which are being heard together, to next week. So you have the time to adequately review that, prepare that. So they would have no objection to that continuance if that's how you would like to proceed.
I'll make the motion to continue until we have a complete packet.
I have a motion to continue resolution the public hearing for resolution 2022-31, ordinance AN-26-22, ordinance Z-971-21-22. Is there a second? got a bunch of people that were signed up to speak, so give me a visual indication. Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing for the assigned cases. Is there any discussion?
Just clarification on the date that we're continuing to. Is it to next Monday or the following?
It would be 5/23, ma'am, next Monday.
That is if we have a special meeting, right?
That is correct, sir.
And at this time, there is not an actual approved special meeting?
That is
Or
correct.
has a request been made for a special meeting?
That is correct, sir. So in light of if we do not have a special meeting, it would be June 6th.
My concern there is we do have a time frame associated with annexation and annexation zoning that we need to stick to. So I would encourage council to give a lot of consideration to continuing to a special meeting to be held next week.
Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Noble?
The city manager sends out a weekly update. The weekly update includes a council schedule. The council schedule for next Monday, the 23rd, shows a special meeting. There are items already loaded into that category for special meeting, even though we have not yet approved a special meeting. And now we would be adding this, and potentially we would also be adding the metro districts that we just laid over. So I think that this should probably be a two-step process, and to approve a special meeting, if you would accept that as amendment, a special meeting for the 23rd, and to move this item to the 23rd.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. And I also wanted to add, I think it's unacceptable that even if we had a special meeting next Monday, that now we're going to be throwing a whole bunch of more information. And what time frame would we get the additional information? When would that be provided to us? Because that's only like another week away. So that's my other concern.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan. Thank you, ma'am. We would publish the agenda with the associated materials by Wednesday of this week to meet publication requirements.
That's correct, yes.
I did put an amendment forward if the motion maker would accept my amendment.
Can you restate the amendment?
Yes, so your motion would include a special meeting on May 23rd.
I
To
don't,
move the agenda, these agenda items to May 23rd and approve a special meeting for May 23rd.
I don't believe that that amendment needs to be made. I will approve the special meeting when the request comes to me, so it'll be taken care of.
All right, thank you.
All right, I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing for these cases. Seeing no further discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. My apologies to the applicant and the applicant's attorney for you coming down here this evening for a case that could not be completed. Next up, we're going to move on to our second public hearing, which will be for the Can-Am Annexation Zoning Resolutions 2022-30, Ordinance AN-259-21-22, Ordinance Z-964-21-22. We'll remind council again to use the public hearing only to ask questions, but not to express opinions or indicate how they will vote. Council members are not to provide testimony if they wish to participate in the decision. Rely only on facts developed in this hearing and in the record, and apply those facts to the criteria in the Land Development Code. Per Council Policy 22, the mayor has the authority to limit testimony to a reasonable length of time to maintain reasonable equity of time for all positions on an issue. Mr. Hayter, would you like to address the council?
Thank you. I would like to do so at this time. Mr. Mayor, Council, at this time, I'd like to ask the following. Is there any council member who cannot hear this matter and make a determination fairly and impartially based on the record before you and the facts and evidence as developed at the public hearing. Will the record reflect that no member of council has indicated an inability to be fair and impartial in this matter? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Eder. This time, I'm going to open the public hearing and invite Andrew Baker, city planner, to make the staff presentation.
Thanks again. This time, I will be presenting the Can-Am Annexation and Planned Unit Development application. This project is located on the southwest corner of East 112th Avenue and US 85. The applicant, who's with us today, Mike Talcott from Quiktrip Corporation, is requesting an annexation and zoning to PUD. I would like to make a note here that there are technically 3 requests. There would technically be 3 motions that would be made, or excuse me, 4, 2 on the annexation. The zoning to PUD includes 2 properties, one of which is already in the city and one of which is to be annexed. Those will have separate approval criteria, and I will discuss those a little bit later. This presentation, all the contents of the case file and annexation zoning regulations are entered into the public record. Once again, all notification requirements have been met, and therefore City Council has jurisdiction to hear this case. In accordance with the Land Development Code, annexation and PUD applications are reviewed by the DRT. Once again, Planning Commission holds a public hearing and provides a recommendation to City Council. And then today, as we're here, City Council holding a public hearing to make a final decision on those requests. This application also meets all 12 of the Annexation Act eligibility criteria that are listed on these 2 slides. This request includes an annexation zoning of Adams County property, which is zoned ADCO I-1 Industrial 1 to Commerce City Planned Unit Development, as well as a rezoning for a Commerce City I-1 property, which is light intensity industrial, to Commerce City PUD. The total project size is 37.9 acres, and that's designated as residential high within the comprehensive plan. The highest density residential land use category that we have, allowing 8 to 4 dwelling units per acre. There is also a local commercial center that is designated on this site. These 2 properties are to be re-subdivided into tracts for future subdivisions. 4 planning areas are currently proposed within this PUD, one of those allowing entirely commercial uses and the remaining 3 only allowing residential uses. The applicant is also applying for NIGID inclusion. Here's an aerial view of the site. Is located on the west side of US 85 and south of 112th, in between the Bell Creek and Dunes neighborhoods. It is currently vacant. The single-family home that you can see on this map has been demolished as between the taking of this aerial photo and now. You can see the residential high designation, which it shares with the condominium portion of the Dunes neighborhood to the north, as well as a little section of Bell Creek there. We also have some industrial as well as medium density residential uses being shown. The star with the letter L denotes the local commercial center, which was planned for this site. We have quite a lot of case history. Some of you will remember this from last year. Some of you were not with us at that time, so I will run through these. But a concept plan was reviewed by staff in 2020. As I had mentioned, there are 2 properties that would be included in this rezoning, one of which is a small railroad right-of-way, which splits the property. That was already annexed in Zone I-1 several years ago. It would be a part of the PUD, but has different approval criteria, as I had mentioned before. The property is now vacant. The annexation and PUD applications were brought before Planning Commission as well as City Council at the end of 2021. Over the course of several neighborhood meetings, as well as the 2 public hearings that we had, the applicant decided to make substantial changes to the PUD, and several of those actually took place after DRT and Planning Commission review. So these applications were withdrawn and resubmitted so as to give staff, as well as Planning Commission and therefore the council, the benefit of reviewing this proposal in its final and updated state. A final plat is also currently under review. That has been revised to only plat tracts as opposed to lots, which essentially does not create real estate which could be developed upon. A subsequent plat amendment would need to take place in order to change those tracts into lots, and therefore would go through a development agreement process where we would agree upon public improvements and items such as that. Quiktrip also has a PUD development permit application for the development of a convenience store and gas station on the corner of East 112th and US 85, and that would be on the commercial planning area that would be allowed per this PUD. That has been in review since the original annexation and PUD applications were under review and has been put on hold until a determination has been made by City Council on the allowed uses for this project. When we brought this project to public hearings last year, semi-truck fueling was a part of the plan. That was removed before the resubmittal, the withdrawal and the resubmittal. So I just wanted to make it clear that though Quiktrip is still proposing a convenience store and gas station, that would only be for passenger vehicles and no large semi-trucks. Here's a look at the annexation map that is being proposed. You can see the small strip that is on the right side or the east side of the property, which splits this, is the old railroad right-of-way, which has already been annexed into the city and zoned I-1. That portion of the parcel, which is outlined in bold, is the Adams County enclave, which is being considered for annexation and annexation zoning today. Pages 1 and 2 of the proposed PUD include a cover sheet and legal description. That legal description does describe those 2 parcels, which I had just shown you. Page 3 provides a project summary and describes the community character and design elements, design guidelines, lighting, landscape, and site furnishing design. It also discusses the transition from the commercial uses at the intersection of 2 arterial streets, that being 112th and US 85, transitioning to lower density and residential uses that are adjacent to the Bell Creek Boulevard to the south. This PUD is proposing 2 private parks and an integrated pedestrian network, as well as 2 main entrances to the site, both of which would have additional landscaping and signage conditions. This is a graphic which describes a few of those things which I just described. You can see planning area A as being the only commercial area and the only area which would allow commercial uses, specifically that being the Quiktrip convenience and gas station site. We also have areas D, C, and B, which would be allowing residential. Just a couple notes, there is a 150-foot minimum setback to any residential living structures that would be placed on planning area B. That's serving as a buffer from US 85, both for noise and for safety. The 2 large stars that are shown there denote the potential location for private parks, as I had mentioned earlier, as well as the dotted line showing pedestrian networks. Image 4 includes the PUD zoning land use chart and a PUD zoning map. That PUD map splitting the lots into 4 planning areas, as we've discussed, and those uses which I have gone through. The planning areas B, C, and D are all allowing multifamily apartments and condos in this case, as well as single-family attached and patio homes per the comprehensive plan explanation of this land use category. And then there are a few public and institutional uses that are allowed in those planning areas as well. Here's a breakdown of each of those planning areas and the size. You can also see the minimum densities that are allowed in each One thing that I want to bring your attention to is that the 30 dwelling units per acre density that you see in planning area C, which would be on the north side of the property, is reduced to 25 dwelling units per acres on the southern portion. All of those meeting the 8 to 40 range that is contemplated in the comprehensive plan. We also have the 3% set aside for private parks per the Commerce City LDC. And one additional note, any multifamily product would also have to include 15% open space on top of that 3% private park area. Page 5 is going to discuss those bulk standards, lot size, lot width, and setbacks. We have different setbacks designated for fueling plaza or fuel sales uses. Once again, just to reiterate, no large truck or semi-truck fueling would be allowed. Those multifamily residential developments having required amount of open space, and those they also go into parking standards as well. Here's a look at some of those bulk standards. One other thing that I would like to point out here is the building height maximums. This was one of the changes that had been made through the course of the neighborhood meetings that we had, as well as after withdrawing and resubmitting the application. The applicant, we started at looking at Commerce City's own R3 designations, and many of the neighbors felt like those maximum heights would be too high. So the maximum building heights here have been reduced to mimic those that would be found across the street. Essentially, planning areas A and C will have the same maximum building height as you find in the dunes to the north, and the same could be said for B and D, being similar to Bell Creek in the south, just trying to create that compatibility. Page 6 shows lot typicals. We saw this in the previous presentation as well. Once again, with the variety of housing products that are proposed and some of the different lot sizes, here's just a quick look at what that ultimate urban design would look like, and ensuring that the proposed structures will fit on the proposed lots. Page 7 describes the allowed uses on the site. One of the main things to look out for is, as you can see on the left-hand side, those industrial, any commercial uses, anything that is outside of your typical residential are only going to be allowed in planning area A. We have foster care homes, apartments and condos, patio homes, single-family attached, boarding or rooming houses and home occupations, as well as assisted living and nursing homes, being allowed in planning areas B, C, and D, but nowhere else in the property. Those allowed uses that we show in planning areas A include public and institutional uses, along with commercial uses such as animal services. We have eating and drinking establishments, fuel sales obviously as being allowed for the Quiktrip gas station. We have office, retail, and food manufacturing like breweries and distilleries. Staff worked pretty extensively with the applicant to ensure that the commercial uses that would be here would not only be those that would benefit from having quick access to US 85 and also the arterial road of 112th, but those that would be appropriate within a neighborhood context and would meet the description in our comprehensive plan of a local commercial center. Those uses as being directly useful and serving the neighborhoods that are directly adjacent. Page 8 of the proposed PUD discusses road sections. Many of these are meeting the City of Commerce City's criteria and approved road sections for multimodal arterials, minor collectors, and local residentials. We do have a modified minor collector in one area that would be coming south from 112th on Florence Street, essentially giving access to the Quiktrip site. Pages 9 and 10 are going to discuss alley sections, very similar to the road sections we just saw, as well as designating alley parking standards. We also have signage regulations on page 10, which essentially is a proposed sign plan for the Quiktrip site. Any other commercial developments or residential developments within this PUD would refer back to the Commerce City LDC. Here is the proposed plat, which I had mentioned earlier. This plat just creating several tracks for Tract A being the commercial planning area that would hopefully eventually be developed by Quiktrip. Track C and B being future residential developments. We also have East 112th and Florence Street right-of-way being shown in Tract H. And then Tract D being the future drainage pond. There's also a few right-of-way dedications that are taking place on 112th and Bell Creek, so we have the remaining tracks in those areas. The proposed concept plan shows the Quiktrip site on that northeast corner of 112th and US 85. There is room within that planning area for a few other potential commercial uses. It looks like they have maybe a drive-through and then an inline retail store. Those final uses not being decided yet, but just showing that there is room for several of those other uses that are allowed by this PUD. And then a variety of high-density housing ranging anywhere from multifamily to patio homes spread throughout the rest. Those showing those amenitized private park areas. We have the regional detention pond and open space spread throughout. Staff distributed the requested zone change and annexation applications for review to all the relevant referral agencies, including all utility companies, the fire district, and internal city departments. At this time, the DRT does not have any concerns with the proposed zone change or the annexation. Staff believes the proposed PUD zoning is appropriate for this site and that is consistent with the Commerce City comprehensive plan designations of high-density residential and local commercial center. The land uses, building heights, and project character and compatibility. Most of these issues were worked out through the multiple rounds of review that we did on this application in 2021. Those few items that remained that got worked out within those neighborhood meetings were pretty clear when the project was withdrawn and resubmitted. So not much review not much discussion took place on those. Staff had pretty much already agreed with the applicant that these uses were compatible with the comprehensive plan and would be supported. The right-of-way dedication and improvements for 112th Bell Creek Boulevard and the internal roads are critical and will only take place with the development of this property. The applicant also worked with CDOT on planning improvements to the 112th and US 85 intersection. So not only are those improvements to the traffic flow in the area and that intersection created by implementing this PUD, but also the fact that not many high-density residential areas exist within our comprehensive plan that have not yet been developed. These are few and far between, and by being able to implement those in an infill development while adding the supported commercial uses, essentially staff feels that this project would create multiple benefits from the city outside of just meeting the LDC. Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 3rd, 2022, and recommended approval with conditions for this PUD. 4 out of 5 planning commissioners felt that the gas station use or fuel sales should be excluded from the table of allowed uses. 1 planning commissioner disagreed with that condition of removing the gas station uses and felt that it was approvable as is. As I had mentioned, we've had several neighborhood meetings on this project. Those that took place in May, September, and October of last year were all concerning the original proposal. There was lots of issues that were raised, and most of those around the semi-truck access to Quiktrip. There are certainly concerns about passenger vehicles as well, but at that time, our main focus was on the semi-truck fueling. Density and maximum building heights were also discussed, as well as dust and mosquito control, the prairie dog population, home values, buffering from the adjacent neighborhoods, and the allowed uses and compatibility. I feel that the applicant went above and beyond here by holding more than the required neighborhood meetings, and even went so far as to withdraw the application in order to make changes that we've seen here and as far as the allowed uses go, and building heights and some other compatibility mitigation techniques that were used. After the resubmittal, an additional neighborhood meeting for this current zoning and annexation application took place virtually on September 15th. We had 35 attendees plus the applicant and city staff. Mostly this meeting was an update on the allowed land uses, the removal of semi-truck fueling, the reduction in building heights. There was also a couple other uses such as hotels, which were removed with that as well. The main issues that were raised, as I had mentioned, some folks still felt that gas stations, even without truck fueling, did not go far enough, but we did discuss that the commercial and high-density residential aspects of this proposal are supported by staff and are supported by the comprehensive plan. The extensive outreach and public input that is received on that comprehensive plan is meant to lead us to land use decisions. And in this case, both the allowed uses and the bulk standards within met what our intention was for these land use categories. Required public notification was given. We mailed postcards to 291 adjacent property owners, those that were in 500 feet of the property. We published a notice in the local newspaper, Commerce City Sentinel, and 6 signs were posted on the property, 3 locations, 1 English and 1 Spanish for each location. And 15 public comments have been received by staff as of May 6th, 2022. As I mentioned in the last case, I will try to run through these as there's a lot of words on these pages, but feel free to ask any questions, and I'd be happy to dive into any of these later. Staff finds that the annexation application is in compliance with all state laws and the Commerce City LDC. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan and the best interests of the city. The property is within the municipal service area and the Commerce City growth boundary. Therefore, it can be considered for annexation. It also is capable of being integrated into the city in compliance with all applicable provisions of the LDC. There is a reasonable likelihood that capacity exists to serve this application. As I had mentioned, the application was referred to all utility companies. No reviewers found any objection to the proposal. And this annexation's boundaries were configured so that it will not limit the city's ability to integrate surrounding land into future annexations. So there will be 2 motions for the annexation criteria that I just mentioned. There is a resolution and an ordinance for that annexation. There will also be 2 separate motions for the zoning portion of this. The first motion would be for the Adams County parcel, which is to be annexed. This refers to section 21-3350, the zoning of newly annexed land, which I'll discuss here. Essentially, one of the 3 criteria on the left side of the page must be met in order for the zoning of newly annexed land to be approved. Staff finds that the first criteria, that being that the zoning is most compatible with the city's comprehensive plan designation for the property, that being high-density residential and a local commercial center, has been met. The second motion will be for the right-of-way for that little strip that bisects the property. Here we're looking at section 21-3232 for rezoning or zone changes. Staff finds that all the criteria within this section have been met. We are not correcting a technical mistake on this part, so we are looking at subsection B, and that the zone change must meet all of the following. It is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan, as we have discussed tonight. The proposed zone district and allowed uses are compatible with the proposed development surrounding land uses and the natural environment. The transition from uses to densities, as well as using height to create compatibility with both of these, and meeting the comprehensive plan designation for the uses and densities involved. Staff feels that this criteria has absolutely been met. The proposed zone district will have adequate provision of public services. As I had mentioned before, this has been referred to all of the normal referral agencies, and we have found no objection with any of those. That goes on to the next criteria, which discusses the adequate provision of public uses for parks, school, and open space, which we also have met. There is a community need for this zoning district. As I had mentioned, the limited amount of high-density residential land uses or land use areas within the comprehensive plan. High-density residential as being absolutely necessary to develop an inclusive city and provide for housing variety and housing options, as well as implementing appropriate local scale commercial uses within an already developed residential area.
Mr. Baker, let me pause you there. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. All right, with everybody's indulgence, we'll go ahead and reconvene.
Thank you. After speaking with Mr. Hayter, I just wanted to go back and, I've been doing this for a couple years and I still get confused. So just to make sure that we're clear, Sections 21, 3350, zoning of new annexed land being applied to the annexation portion of this proposal. Also, Sections 21-3232 for the rezoning. Now, because that portion of already annexed land that is old railroad right-of-way has already been annexed, only sections 21-3232 will be considered for that one. And then at the end, we will go through the approval criteria for PUD zonings as well. They all essentially say the same thing. I will, in respects of everybody's time, I'll tell you that staff has found that all of these criteria have been met. Rezoning approval criteria, consistent with the comprehensive plan and the LDC, compatible with surrounding land uses in the natural environment, adequate services and adequate provision of public uses being there, community need, as well as, I guess that would be it. So now for the entire site, we're looking at sections 21-3251 for PUD zone documents. Once again, I will rush through these, but staff has found all of these criteria within these slides to be met. The DRT recommends that the City Council vote to approve this annexation request in case AN-259-21-22. Planning Commission recommends 4-1 on May 3rd, 2022 that City Council vote for approval with conditions this annexation zoning and rezoning request. That condition being the removal of fuel sales from the table of allowed uses. Myself and the applicant are here and available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Appreciate all that information, your patience while we dealt with some technicalities. Before we get into opening it up for questions, I'm going to make a statement here and ask if any council member wishes to make a motion after the statement is read. Robert's Rules of Order allows for a 2/3 vote to limit debate. Does any council member wish to make a motion to limit debate? Examples of such a motion would be each member gets to speak for no more than 10 minutes, or we have a hard stop time of something like 8 p.m. in order to end debate. Does any council member wish to make such a motion? Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to motion to limit debate to 10 minutes per council member.
Councilmember Dara.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion to limit debate during this public hearing to be no more than 10 minutes per council member. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I do have a question. Mr. Gibson, you going to be able to tally up and keep a list of how many people have spoken for how many minutes?
I think I can, sir, yes.
I think you can? I'm confident you can as well. Thank you. All right, I have a motion and a second to limit debate to no more than 10 minutes per each council member. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion is going to carry 8-1. Okay, this time, does anybody on council have any questions for staff regarding this case? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for tonight's presentation. But I was just confused in the presentation because it stated that the Planning Commission made the two motions for the unannexed and annexed portion, and then it said they said on that May 3rd meeting, I make a motion to not have a gas station as a condition. And then it says who seconded it and all. And then in the ordinance, though, it states that the condition being the removal of fuel cells from the proposed allowed uses per this zoning request. So can you tell me what type of fuel cell? So does that include they still want to have a gas station there on the side?
So the current PUD allows fuel sales, and that is only for passenger vehicles, as I had mentioned, not semi-trucks. Planning Commission voted to approve the PUD on the condition that that one use of fuel sales was removed from the allowed uses. So Planning Commission is essentially recommending that the gas station or fuel sales use not be allowed as part of this PUD, and voted 4-1 for that approval with conditions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I would like to note that the applicant also has a presentation. I'm not sure if we had skipped through that, but I just wanted to let you guys know.
We'll get to that after we have council ask questions of staff, if there are any other questions. Does anybody else on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Douglas.
So do you know if the recommendation of taking away the fuel sales would also include the convenience store as well then, or?
No, retail uses would not be included in that. It would just be the fuel sales component.
Would just be the gas station?
Correct.
Thank you. Oh, I have another question. So you said that this was part of the comprehensive plan that was done in 2010. Were we allowed to, I'm assuming it was when it was done in 2010, completed in 2013, I believe. But so when that comprehensive plan was done, even though this parcel wasn't annexed into the city, it still was included in the comprehensive plan?
Correct. Typically, when a future land use map is drawn, a jurisdiction will include all of the parcels that are within their growth boundary. When annexations take place, the future land use map is really what's used to determine those appropriate zone districts. And so really it's almost more important to look at those properties that aren't in the city yet and don't have an existing context to look at.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Can you do me a favor and go back to the slide that showed the conceptual map? Showed 112th US 85. So I just want to confirm on here, there will not be direct access to the commercial parcel from US 85?
Correct. There will be no direct access from the highway to this parcel.
Okay, and from the north coming into the commercial parcel would be right in, right out only?
Right in, right out only from that commercial pad, yes.
Okay.
The connection where Florence Street goes to 112th would be full movement.
And would Florence Street have a traffic light installed at it?
Not at this time. We have Chris Hodel, who's joined us virtually, who could speak to some of the public improvement components, but I do believe that the spacing between US 85 and 112th and then the intersection of Florence and 112th would be too close to warrant an additional traffic signal.
So we're gonna have multifamily on parcels B, C, and D, or I don't want to use the wrong term, attached, single family?
That's correct, sir.
Thanks. Plus a very popular convenience store that would see thousands of cars a day and no traffic light to help get traffic that is coming And a majority of the traffic that would be coming to that would be piling up on 112th Avenue, making a left turn on Florence to get into the facility. And we wouldn't have any kind of traffic control device there to make sure that people who are leaving out of Bell Creek and turning up 112th, or leaving out of the dunes, or any of those other surrounding neighborhoods that are pre-existing, to have a safe means of reaching US 85 and dealing with the thousands of cars anticipated for this type of facility.
As with every zoning and annexation application, there was a traffic impact study that was submitted. That has been reviewed and approved by Public Works, which I'm assuming meets their criteria that this project would create safe access and a safe traffic network.
Okay. Is that traffic management plan part of our packet?
Yes, it is.
Very good, thank you. Does anybody else on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Madera.
Will CDOT be updating the light signal at that intersection?
There's been lots of discussion with CDOT. This question, I would want to refer to my colleagues in Public Works. We had extensive discussions with CDOT about current improvements that they're doing to that intersection, improvements that will be funded partially by, if this project were to be approved, as well as the public improvements to 112th that are already going to be planned with this project. So the answer is yes. With that intersection being part of more of a long-term and regional plan for CDOT, this project wouldn't have immediate impacts to those, but the funding that it would get would absolutely help move those along.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I will invite the applicant forward to make your presentation.
On button, all right. Good evening. My name's David Foster, and I am here tonight representing the applicant. We also have a number of professionals here with us tonight to answer questions that I might not be able to. So I encourage those questions if they are, in fact, on your mind. Let me begin by thanking not only your staff, but the city and the process. I think hopefully by the time I get done with my presentation and your deliberations, you'll at least appreciate the time and energy that's gone into this process, including 4 neighborhood meetings that I think really did make for a much better project than what you saw preliminarily and what neighbors saw at least beginning 2.5 years ago. So again, and let me just address this one question. Of course, my client, the applicant, is Quiktrip, so we're not supportive of the condition by Planning Commission that you remove gas fuel sales for passenger cars. That's the business that they're in. So I just wanted to make sure that was part of the record. So we're going to start with this presentation, and Andrew, do I do this myself? Now you're in trouble. Okay. So we have a number of slides tonight, and I'll try and make my way through them pretty clearly and carefully and quickly, but there's a lot for you to consider tonight. To begin, this site mostly exists. There's a small chunk that exists in the city, but mostly exists in the county. It's zoned. It's zoned I-1 in the county. It has an entitlement. I know frequently we sit at zoning hearings or annexation hearings, and there's this belief that unless you grant us the zoning that we're seeking, there's no entitlement to the ground. And in this case, it's in the county. It's zoned I-1 and has a series of uses associated with an I-1 industrial district. We are choosing to zone it to a PUD, but not necessarily the PUD that you've seen over the course of the last few years that I know that you've been engaged with reviewing with more frequency. And so I'll explain that process as well and how we got to where we got in terms of the PUD. The context is important, existing conditions. We are surrounded by Bell Creek and Dunes Park on the north and the south. And on the east, it's a pretty significant highway corridor, Highway 85, and on the west by Denver Water Storage Facility. The plans that we've used in order to get to where we are tonight include the US 85 corridor, state highway plan, and then we've looked at most notably the 2010 comprehensive plan. So thank you, Councilwoman Douglas. We'll speak about that in a little bit more detail shortly. But in fact, the 2010 comprehensive plan identifies the site in two different ways, both as a residential high and a local commercial center. And we'll speak to why that's meaningful here shortly. And Councilwoman, just in the nick of time, from the first page of the 2010 comp plan, and you know this because you're going through your comp plan process again. Thank you for doing that. It's 2010 and since you've done it the last, but you included City Council and Planning Commission and members from your own community. And I will note you also included folks from the development community who are listed there under the Citizen Advisory Committee. And it's a very robust process by which you adopt a comprehensive plan for both properties within your city and properties that you're going to annex. And within your comprehensive plan, the purpose is identified because it provides a guide for all future development in Commerce City, including those areas yet to be annexed into the city. So there we have it in black and white, the purpose of the comprehensive plan. And using the future land use plan will be a guide for both the city and developers to help shape future neighborhood centers, open space civic uses, and employment areas over the long term. It designates strategic commercial centers that are both regional and community commercial. We've seen that already in this comprehensive plan and for the site. But what I thought was meaningful as well is you want your community, both the people who live here and the people who are looking to develop property, understand what it is that's in your minds. And that's why you've put together the comprehensive plan that other people ultimately rely on. As I said, you have two designations here, both the residential high and the local commercial center. Each of them has different meaning. As it relates to the residential high, it's a minimum of 8 to 40 units to the acre. And as it relates to local commercial center, and you can read some of the language for yourself, but it includes opportunities for convenience, shopping, and service needs of a small trade area within or directly adjacent to a neighborhood. And what's important is there are 3 local commercial centers that are designated in your 2010 comprehensive plan, but this language right here, the future land use plan, does not designate all potential local commercial centers because there may be opportunities to add to the list. But in this case, we don't have to do that. We don't have to look at the criteria because you've already designated this particular interchange as a local commercial center, and it meets the criteria that is in the code. And convenience commercials also identified and defined in the comprehensive plan as specifically including restaurants, delis, and gas, etc. So these are the documents that we rely on in purchasing property and developing property and hopefully rezoning property. Next is you go from a comprehensive plan that gives you general ideas about how property is to develop. And this particular intersection right here at 120th and Chambers is also listed as a local commercial center in the 2010 comprehensive plan. And just as recently as 2019, this city council approved a PUD amendment reaffirming convenience retail with gas right there on the southwest corner, the 7-Eleven. The other facility existed at the time that you adopted the 2010 comprehensive plan, and so it's consistent with your planning purposes. And as I was mentioning, This is the proposed list of land uses and the PUD. And what I would like to just kind of walk through the scenario is you start with your comp plan, you look at some of the recent zoning approvals, and then what we also contemplated, frankly, I know that maybe only you think your family listens to council meetings every other Monday night, but some of us are listening as well, and we're paying attention. We're paying attention to things that matter to you. And one of the things that we've heard that matters to you is the old style PUD. And with the old style PUD, what it really allowed for is a mixed use PUD, but then kind of put it on the developer to determine where certain uses might exist. Here, what you see is it's a mixed use PUD, but in this particular instance, we're being far more prescriptive. So on that corner, you want commercial. Commercial is the only set of uses that will be allowed. In planning areas B, C, and D, residential will be the only uses that are allowed. And at the end of the day, you have a mixed use with your PUD. I mentioned the meaningful outreach and timeline, just even starting with the first pre-app back in October of 2019. It's been a long process. Frankly, I think it has resulted in a much better project. The project that you looked at back in October of 2021 isn't as good as the plans and the annexation and the zoning requests that you see tonight. So in terms of process, I think the meaningful process has resulted in a much better project. This is what was a result of the first plan. It was a pretty significant social media outreach that identified a number of things in terms of the truck stop, potential pot sales, a motel. And so that wasn't real helpful to the dialogue and the discussion. And so as part of the process, we took a step back and started again, relying on community feedback. Concerns about truck traffic, concerns about the truck stop and truck fueling. There was desire for residential use at this particular property, which was great to see. I know that you sometimes on Mondays have issues with residential support or densifying parts of your community. There was concern about the mixed-use zoning being too flexible, so that's why we restricted B, C, and D to only residential uses. And then when I went online and heard the last city council meeting, you made it very clear that you wanted to ensure that Spanish speakers were included into the process, both in terms of notice and in terms of neighborhood outreach and the neighborhood meeting. And so that was accomplished as well. And these were the very specific dates upon which these meetings happened. We're only identifying 2, 3, and 4 because those were all subsequent to the one neighborhood meeting that was even required. And you do get a sense of the things that were changing. And to staff's credit, they had identified the robust changes and outreach and modifications. Does that mean everybody's happy? Come on, this is city council. So we know that not everybody's going to be happy, but we think that we've done a lot to make this a much better project. You hopefully have seen in your packet a number of comments from neighbors who started in opposition and slowly navigated through the process, through facts, to actually supporting the project. And so I do want to acknowledge that there probably are people here or online who will speak against us, and yet I do believe that this is a much improved product than you saw the last time. We are changing the zoning from industrial in the county to this PUD that you've seen. This isn't what you're going to get. This is what was in front of you, and this would have given a little bit more flexibility to allowing the developer to figure out timing of uses. This is what we are proposing. And again, much more prescriptive, a lot more predictable in terms of ensuring that there is retail. Another thing that I have heard from time to time on Mondays is, what about the retail in our community? Well, in this particular instance, retail's leading this project. The staff already identified there's a PUD permit waiting to be reviewed upon the annexation and zoning because retail's leading this project. It's not following after rooftops, like I know that you hear from time to time. In this particular instance, it's leading, and we've increased the amount of acreage and opportunities to increase the retail offerings in this community. And because retail is leading the way, there's not a request for a metro district in this particular project. Again, we've been listening to the concerns of this community and of this city council. This does a pretty good job of summarizing what we did to fix and change the application. We made it more predictable in terms of planning areas A, B, C, and D, commercial and residential. We reduced maximum heights from 75 to 50 feet in planning area A, and from 75 to 40 feet in B, C, and D. Well, actually 75 to 50 feet in C. Matching heights in the abutting neighborhoods. So we were accommodating. And we removed certain uses that we heard were not acceptable. The truck fueling we heard was not acceptable. That actually made it more possible to increase other retail offerings. We removed that from the uses. And we heard that hotel or motel lodging establishments was not something that was preferred, and so we removed that. And so I hope you're seeing that there was a lot of work to accommodate what we were hearing. This was the previous plan that you may or may not have seen. And within that was a significant diesel fuel canopy for trucks. This is the conceptual plan that we are proposing tonight. And what happens when you get rid of a serious truck fueling facility? You add potential retail uses. You add a potential, I know neighbors love to talk about drive-through Starbucks. You make it possible for additional potential retail uses on that corner that support and are consistent with the convenience retail that is already under initial review. Proposed plat. I'm going to sound like a broken record. We've been listening to your city council meetings and your concern when you review plats. So we're going through that process. We're being very robust in how we are approaching it. And we are working on improvements to 112th and Highway 85. Some we will be implementing ourselves, and some of the improvements will be made in the form of contributions to the city so that they can make the improvements alongside CDOT. And I have a slide in just a second that will articulate that in a little bit more clarity. And this is it. What we hope is the first use at this site is a Quiktrip. And it's a neighborhood serving convenience store. It's a passenger car fueling facility. It will have between 17 and 22 employees. The managers of this facility make between $55,000 and $100,000. And so this is a sense, and if any of you have traveled and have been to a Quiktrip, you have been in and you know it is just, there's a different feel inside a Quiktrip for a convenience retail and gas facility than other folks in the marketplace. And so we're excited at the prospect here. Mike Talcott is with Quiktrip, and he can go through excruciating detail these next few slides in terms of the safety and security measures that they implement at this facility. But here's a list of the kinds of safety and security measures. They care very much about ensuring the ongoing cleanliness and safety of their facility because they own it and because these are their employees. And so that is an important factor for Quiktrip. This is an example from a different facility, how there is every inch of the site is covered by surveillance, by cameras, to ensure that there is no funny business taking place on our property. And so that just gives you a sense of the great lengths that they go to ensure surveillance is covered throughout the entirety of a property. And this is a light study that was done to ensure that all of our light stays and remains on our property. And so this is an example, not an example of a different site, this is actually this site, so that you can see how the light study works and how light is limited to the property. Mr. Mayor, you started to speak about some of these issues, so let's just kind of hit them head on. There are a number of improvements that are proposed, including a four-way stop at Florence and 112th. The traffic study does not warrant a signal there, and it's too close to the state highway. And so CDOT would never let us have a signal at that intersection, but the warrant also isn't there. But you have a four-way stop there. You have a raised median across 112th for the full length. You see there's the right in and right out only from the facility, so that limits really the left turn in is the biggest concern coming off of 85. So you can see that you have to make your way up to Florence in order to do that. And those are just to mention a few, and then there is the extension of a left turn lane from 112th North, and then funding to the city to build the same facility on the east side of 85 to add an additional lane to go through and to make a turn. We had heard at the Planning Commission, why is Commerce City the recipient of this facility, but saying it not in a very positive way. And here is the reality, is Quiktrip is making a real splash and entry into the state, and you can see all of the communities within which they are proposing to build. Some are being built, some are going through entitlement, and so, you know, take your pick of local municipalities, but I'm sure that you all recognize some of these cities. Fuel stations in vicinity of project. We heard, hey, there's a facility up there at 120th and Highway 85, Tail Feathers. That's close here. Thank you very much, but we don't want another fuel station in close proximity. As you all know, because you signed the application, you've received federal dollars alongside CDOT, DRCOG, in order to acquire that facility and help with the construction of the overpass at 120th. So that site is going away. And so the dollars are there to acquire that, between $8.6 million that you applied for through DRCOG. The city themselves has put $1.25 million into that site and that acquisition. So you've been leading the way. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know because you've been doing it. And that's a snapshot of the future improvement there at 85 and 120th. So we're losing a fueling station along this very, very busy Highway 85 corridor, not adding one in the process. So as I mentioned, this is the ultimate kind of conceptual plan that we have put together. You can see that we have local retail, we have higher density residential, and we have public improvements. We have added some EV charging stations at the leasing center in the community. And you can also see all of the other improvements that have been addressed that I've discussed already, probably ad nauseum. Here is a letter from the 27J School District. We have a cash in lieu of land dedication to the tune of $267,000 that we will be paying, and an additional $171,000 to the Capital Facility Fee Foundation, totaling $438,000 to the school district, which I believe is good with the fee in lieu on this site. We have a quick video. Andrew, will you just play that real quick? Thanks.
Welcome to Can-Am, a 37-acre commercial and residential development located at the southwest corner of the intersection of East 112th Avenue and Highway 85. A development that will pay for or construct the following improvements: Highway 85 and 112th Avenue intersection improvements, the widening of 112th Avenue to include a median, detached sidewalk, and bike lanes, the widening of Bell Creek Boulevard, including a detached sidewalk, and the construction of new internal road Florence Street as it turns into 111th Avenue. The 7 acres of dedicated commercial uses within the Can-Am community could include a new Quiktrip convenience store with made-to-order food and groceries, a new retail or restaurant building, and a new multi-tenant retail building that could include shops and restaurants. These new retail uses will be enjoyed by both Can-Am and neighboring residents alike. Can-Am's dedicated 30 acres of residential land includes a variety of housing products compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, including front-loaded single-family detached patio homes, rear-loaded single-family detached patio homes, rear-loaded townhomes, and front-loaded townhomes. The community will enjoy a network of sidewalks and trails to promote pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. The residential and commercial uses both comply with the city's comprehensive plan for the site, as well as provide much-needed housing stock and neighborhood commercial within the city. With your approval tonight, we will be that much closer to bringing the Can-Am community to life. Thank you.
Okay. And then finally, I'll just leave you with this. And again, I know that you do get your packets in advance, and I do know that you review them. And if I didn't know that before tonight, I surely know it tonight. And so hopefully that you've seen a number of residents who have voluntarily, I mean, we don't even know these folks, who have sent in their letters indicating that they've appreciated the process, that they felt like they were heard, and in some cases, they look forward to having the gas conveniences close by. And, again, I would hope that you would look at, some of these thoughts of people. I find it harder to get, I've been doing this for a long time, and I find it much harder to get people to show up when they like something versus when they don't like something. And so when people do voluntarily send in letters of support, it's something that at least I like to highlight, because I think it is a reflection of the process that went well. So we are, again, as I mentioned here, available to answer questions that you have. And really thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Appreciate that presentation and the enlightening video. I want to correct one narrative, though. And I'm going to ping on this idea of the four-way stop sign again. The distance from US 85 to Bell Creek Boulevard is 517 feet. The distance from US 85 to Florence is 661 feet. There is a traffic light at Bell Creek Boulevard and 104th, 517 feet away from US 85. So I'm going to question why it is that we would be allowed to have a traffic light 517 foot away from US 85, but not 661 feet away.
Yeah, I don't know what resulted in that approval, but I know that there is no warrant for it here.
All right. Also notice that the traffic analysis says that they anticipate 7,000 trips daily to this area on a weekday. That's a lot of traffic to put on the residents coming in and out of the dunes. requiring a four-way traffic stop instead of a four-way traffic light. Any council members have any questions for the applicant? Councilmember Noble.
Could you explain the ingress and egress to the Quiktrip area again?
The way in which people are going to access? Is there I think this is
Might be
probably
24,
24?
could be.
You got it. Is that it? I
Okay,
think
that
this
was
probably
good.
gives you the closest view. So if you are coming down south on 85, you'll go west on 112th. And the only way that you'll access, because there's a raised median in 112th, so you'll go to the four-way stop at Florence.
And flip a U?
No, you'll just enter, you'll take a left, and then there's an entrance that will be built in order to access. No U-turns here. So that will give people access. But the problem, and again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but the problem with allowing access directly off 112th is that there could be backing up back to 85. And so that's why you end up going down to Florence with the four-way stop.
And why isn't there access from 85?
Well, first of all, you could probably have any traffic engineer come up here and tell you that accessing directly off of 85 is a really bad idea. It's hard to get access, and that the ingress and egress and the XL and decel lanes, because of the speed, to put it mid-block, because that's what you're talking about, because you'd be putting it mid-block, you wouldn't be putting it at a stoplight, is real dangerous on a high speed highway there. You don't want to access off of 85. That would be a bad idea.
And what was your decision regarding going with the minimum for parks? That's considering the density.
You have to start somewhere, Councilwoman. You start with, what the code requires. I have often seen as development kind of figures itself out when you actually get into more of the engineering, that always increases, it doesn't decrease. You start with the minimum and I'm not suggesting it's going to get up to 10%, but I usually see you start at the minimum requirement and then it always does go up a little bit. But those are your rules in terms of the 3%.
Thank you. I have a question for the mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, could you please explain the 10-minute rule? Does that include the answer?
I'll talk for a long time. Very slowly, Councilwoman.
Given Mr. Foster's ability to gab, I don't think that would be very fair.
I whipped through that. That was the quickest I've been in a long time.
I just wanted to clarify that motion. Thank you.
Any other council members with questions for the applicant? Councilmember Douglas?
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Foster. Appreciate that. So are all of these units, they're rental, correct? They're not for sale?
So we're under contract with a potential builder, and they're kind of contemplating their, how they're going to build it out. It looks like rental is, for that kind of density, rental, is generally what you'll see with that density.
And what kind of, do you anticipate that the parking that you have allotted is sufficient? And is there any covered parking, or is it all outdoor?
So again, I just want to be clear that the residential that you saw here is very conceptual. We'll have to go through site plan and meet all of the city's requirements. So this is all conceptual. So I can't really answer your question. I'm not trying to avoid it. There's no plan yet for how that gets built out other than this. Although I think in this concept, there is covered parking, if I'm not mistaken. But do you know? No. I don't think we know that right this minute.
Thank you.
Council member, if I may, your questions did sound like they were more pointed towards a potential plat and what the actual plat would look like as opposed to the annexation and the zoning, which we're looking at this time. So it's something that I think that it might not be fair to expect that level of detail at this point.
Please forgive me, I'm new.
You're fine. You're fine.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you for your time this
Great,
evening.
thank you.
We're now going to move on to residents who have registered to speak virtually on this matter. We will start with Leslie Holmes.
Leslie, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes,
Provide your
thank you very
testimony.
much. Can you hear me?
We can, yes, Leslie.
Yes, thank you. Hello, council members. I am confused and concerned about this presentation here. There's so many misleading and deceitful things that I'm seeing. Even the plat, the slides on here, Dunes Creek is completely built out. Then it shows a vacant field on these slides. This is on May 3rd, it was voted that the table, the approved use table, that fuel sales be removed. And all I'm hearing is fuel sales, fuel sales, fuel sales, that there's going to be a gas station here. This highway is so dangerous, and even the applicant and the presenters here have said this is a real dangerous high-speed highway. There were 4 deaths in February from this real dangerous high-speed highway, and we're looking at increasing traffic, 7,000 vehicles a day. That this is just stunning to me. The applicant only listed 4 residents in support of this. There's nearly 1,000 that are not in support of this, as well as the planning division approved this with the removal of fuel sales. So I'd like to ask you, why are we here right now going over the same thing when this has been voted on with the planning division with removal of fuel sales? This is misleading, and this is not for the neighborhood. This is for profit on this very, very busy highway. And on that slide that was up there where it shows the right in, right out, people jump those curbs all the time. I see it down on Highway 85 and 60th where there's a Starbucks down there. I sit at that light on my way to work and I see people turn, and they turn in that no turn here. They're supposed to go down further down to turn into that Starbucks in that Arby's area, but they don't do it. They turn in that first one where you're not supposed to turn. This is going to happen. Please, I ask you to look at this traffic study, do a new traffic study as well, because this traffic study was done in August of 2021 when many were still in lockdown. So I would like you to look at this really dangerous high-speed highway, which has been stated on from this applicant many times, real dangerous high-speed highway, and to not approve the fuel sales. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody on council have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, we'll move on to David Yost.
David, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide your testimony.
Thank you. I will. So if we deny the fuel sales and the existence of the Quiktrip convenience store, my question is, what will happen to plots B and C? Will those be denied, or will the developer take those out of the whole comprehensive plan. The second question I have is, does the developer plan to make improvements? So if I understand this right, everything northbound on 85 will have, everything northbound on 85 will have a lane to turn right onto 112. And everything southbound on 85 will also have the addition of a right-hand turn, to make it onto 112. Is that correct? And the third question I have is, if I understand 112 correctly, the other side of 85 is a one lane road, or at least at the best a 2-lane road. So my question is, will there be any improvement to the other side of 85 to access onto 112 on the west side? Hold on. Is the convenience store tied? So again, is the convenience store tied to the development of the additional land use for apartments, townhomes, park, and commercial uses in all of A, B, and C? So the other question I have is, yeah, that's about it. That's what I have. I understand the community's concerns about traffic and additional congestion of 112. I understand that. I do feel like this is an important addition to our city in two respects. One is the development of retail property, which the city is in dire need of, and two, additional high density housing. And it's another thing that Commerce City is in dire need of. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Yost. Does anyone on council have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, we thank you for your time. We'll move on to Matt Paul.
Matt, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide your testimony. Matt, we cannot hear you. Mayor Huseman, it looks like Matt is having some technical difficulties.
Okay, next is Stephanie Fernandez.
Stephanie, you should be able to unmute yourself and you'll have to provide your testimony.
Okay, you can hear me, right?
We can, yes, Stephanie.
Okay, hi. I just wanted to say that I was noticing as we were going through the slides, that there was the point of the fuel sales on 120th. I know that intersection, but the difference is over there, the speed is much lower. Whereas here on 112th, it's like, I mean, like Leslie said earlier with the accidents and stuff and the construction, it's kind of a little dangerous. And as a mom, I don't want to have to worry about all the increase of traffic in the area with my kids, trying to go to the park and trying to drive in the intersection and stuff. But I've always been against the project. I do appreciate that they have tried to listen to the community and get rid of, the diesel thing. But I think also with the addition of the fuel sales is a little much. I think that they should not allow the fuel sales because of the fact that there's increased traffic. And my question was actually with the four-way stop. Whenever there's an accident on 85, I have noticed that the traffic will back all the way up into the neighborhood. So how do you deal with that with a four-way stop? That's just, there's just so much traffic, and with the increase of traffic, it's going to be a complete nightmare. And I just think that, with all these meetings and things that we have, it just seems like we're being listened to, but then also not at the same time. With still trying to drive the thing with the fuel sales. I've never been opposed to developing the area. We knew we've lived here for 6 years, and we know that that was going to be developed at some point. But again, why the fuel station? I think the convenience store might be okay, but without the fuel sales, I just think that it's just, and like what Leslie mentioned earlier with people turning incorrectly, I can see that happening too. I see people making all kinds of illegal driving things in and out of the neighborhood, not stopping for stop signs. So what's going to stop people from stopping at these stop signs and causing potential traffic accidents? But I think that was all I had, and just hoping that you guys actually listen to everyone in the community and take the time to consider all of our voices. And we've all said no against this for countless months, and we've really tried. We want to improve our community. We want what's best for our community, and we just want to see what we all want as a whole, what's good for everybody and that's safe for everybody. Because last thing we want is to have another thing spread all over the news about, I had people texting me like, hey, was that your intersection? With those poor kids that died in the car accident. I had people texting me, and I said, yeah, that's right by my house. So it would be unfortunate to see more of that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody on council have any questions for this speaker? Seeing none, we thank you for your time. We'll move on to Steve Douglas.
Steve, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide your testimony.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, I was able to take the place of a regular member on planning, and we went through just under different meetings that were proposed with the community, and the community spoke. And so that was the decision that was made to approve the project and take the fueling out because of the number of accidents had occurred over the years on 112th and Highway 85. But what was not mentioned was the PLE study, which is a planning environmental linkage, and that's through the corridor Highway 85. There's two proposals for changes at Highway 85 and 112th, which is a SPUI, which stands for Single Post Urban Interchange. So basically it's like a flyover. 85 would continue and would be a flyover at 112 supposedly, or 85 would be raised and 112th would go under. But it actually would take that corner out where they want to put the convenience stores. Both projects, the first option and then the skewed option both pretty much take out that corner area there. And was that considered, was that part of the packet? Because that was not part of our packet planning. And maybe sometimes you guys have more information than we do. It's not always liked information. And then, when they first came back, just this last time, they were really pushing the right in, right out. And then the traffic study was brought up about, hey, look at the accidents and, because there's been other accidents on Highway 85, so it's not the first occurrence. And so they're really pushing that. And then just when we had the meeting last week with planning, when their traffic study team came up, the lady kind of had not really serious look on her face. They really didn't do her homework as far as the traffic study. And those were old traffic studies. It's not up to date. And as you know, Commerce City keeps growing. We got a lot of traffic on Highway 85. So, and just to warrant a stop sign and all those cars coming through there, that's not going to handle four-way. So I'm pushing for council to vote to approve the residential, but also support planning on not having a fuel site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Does anybody on council have any questions for the speaker? Mr. Hurst?
Good evening, sir. Can I please ask you where you're getting the information about the traffic? Because I have on my laptop here pulled up CDOT's Otis program, which is open to all public. And that is where you generate your traffic numbers from. And it takes average over a decade and not over, a pandemic-ridden 2021. So a traffic study done in August of 2021 does not consider August of 2021 numbers. It considers the decade prior to that. And so it considers growth, it considers accidents, it considers all of that. And so and the PEL as well, if a corner is taken out of a PEL, right-of-way is not approved by the Colorado Department of Transportation. If it is in their future plans, and they will then buy the right-of-way and not allow any development for that to happen.
Well, okay, thank you for that question. Now, this is on the Colorado Department site, cdot.gov, and it's under US 85 corridor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I go to the US 85 PLE.
PL. Mm-hmm.
And it brings up the US 85 Planning and Environmental Linkage Study, and it shows CDOT in conducting a US 85 Planning and Environmental Linkage Study. And then it just goes through the previous US 85 studies. Then you have to click on the bottom where it says Project US 85. There's a lot of steps you have to get to just to get to what I just was saying. And it's number one.
Steve, when was the PEL completed?
It doesn't say on there.
The thing about it is Highway 85 is a national highway freight corridor. It is listed as the top 3 growth corridors in the state right now. And so they would have to be purchasing right-of-way a decade in advance of any project. So it's a tough sell for me to believe that, because the process in place at CDOT would say otherwise.
If I may interrupt, I'm sorry. I would just like to remind the council members and the commenter that your decision for you is based on what you have in the record before you. And it sounds like we're getting into some extraneous issues and materials that are not provided and are not a part of the record, but your decisions be based on the record and evidence and facts as they're presented here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else on council have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you again for your time. We'll move on to Alex Payne.
Alex, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide your testimony.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
All right. I live right here at Dunes, so my apartment or condo would be directly across from the convenience store, gas station. So the lights would come into my room because my master room is facing the convenience store, gas station. So my concern is the traffic to get across 85 on 112th going eastbound or westbound is a joke. The traffic light takes 35, 45 seconds for it to change from green to red. So sometimes when I have to take my son to school, I'll sit there at that traffic light, 3 lights, before I even get a chance to go over. And if there's a train on the other side, you ain't getting across. You have to go up to 112th, or you have to go down to 104th I mean, it's a nightmare trying to get in and out of the neighborhood right now as it is. We got Florence right here in 112th. You put in a 4-way stop right there, you got 500 and some odd feet, you said, and if it backs up, you're gonna have people on 85 waiting to get in. You're gonna have people on the other side of Florence trying to get out. It's a nightmare to get out of here sometimes. In the mornings is the worst. If the trains are there, it's a nightmare. So I mean, putting a gas station in an area that's so congested already as it is just making more of a fiasco. You're gonna have more accidents, you know, let alone the crime, the devaluation of our properties. I mean, everything is a revolving door. You bring a gas station, what happens? The property's value goes down. They're going to get money because they're getting people coming by all the time. But we're losing money because our neighborhood will suffer. I mean, you don't have a gas station right next to a residential neighborhood. And this is a nice neighborhood. We're not living in tract houses where they got apartments and low income housing. This isn't a neighborhood like that. We got very nice houses here. It's a very nice community. There is trails already. We don't need a gas station to put in a trail for us to walk to the gas station. We got a gas station on 104th. There's a little convenience store in Bell Creek, which was robbed not too long ago, and the cops surrounded the neighborhood, so the people that robbed it couldn't even get out of the neighborhood. So they were going into people's houses, trying to get to hide from the cops. That was November, I believe, November, December. So I mean, with the convenience store, a gas station, there is going to be more crime. I have a 10-year-old or 11-year-old boy that lives with me. I don't need no convenience store. I don't want him walking across the street, getting hit by a car, trying to go to the gas station because he thinks that I'll just go get a candy. We don't need that in our neighborhood. A little like a restaurant, a pub, something like that where we can go and sit down and have a dinner would be nice, but no gas station or a convenience store. And then the right in, right out, that would make it even more of a nightmare. This is a really busy area right here. You got people racing on 112th or from 85. As soon as that light turns green, they're drag racing. We got motorcycles that run around that little, there's a loading docks or whatever for semis for like food storage or whatever. They go around there and they're racing back and forth in the parking lot. So you hear noise all the time. We definitely don't need a gas station because we're going to be up all night with the lights. They don't shut down. They're 24 hours. So you're going to have lights, cars, and everything starting up, shutting off. You're going to have loud semis or loud diesel pickups that are get diesel. As soon as they fire up, they start up, it's loud. I mean, I live right across the street from where that convenience store would be at. Literally, my bedroom door faces right there where that plot is at. If I can ask you for anything, I'd ask you guys to deny the gas station, please. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of neighbors that are in this community that do not want another gas station in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Does anybody on council have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, we thank you again for your time this evening. Mr. Gibson, do we have anybody that signed up to speak under the public hearing?
Mayor Huseman, no members of the public in person signed up to speak on the public hearing.
Thank you. Can you identify any written comments submitted for this matter?
Yes, Mayor Huseman. Written comments received by the deadline were incorporated in the updated agenda packet published earlier this afternoon.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any rebuttals they would like to make before I close the public hearing?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call up one of my colleagues, Kristen Sullivan, works at our firm, former Public Works Director in Adams County, to handle some of the transportation issues that were raised.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Matt Paul raised his hand again. I think he had audio. I saw it appear on the screen.
Mr. Gibson, is Mr. Paul available to speak?
Matt, are you able to unmute yourself and provide your testimony?
Can you guys hear me?
We can now, yes.
Sorry about that. I had to dial in. I appreciate, Councilwoman, forgot your last name, but thank you for seeing me raise my hand as I was trying to do that quite a lot. First off, thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to point out a couple things. Obviously, Quiktrip has its massive payroll behind it and has a ton of individuals there ready to counter-argue all of the residents that have spoken many times on this case and spoken against the gas station. So they'll continue to throw money at it to try to make us go away. One of the individuals for Quiktrip referenced some of the meetings that we've had. This has been ongoing for 2 years, and so residents are volunteering their time. I'm here volunteering my time, trying to get this stopped, whereas those individuals are being paid and compensated to be there. So it's easy for the first meeting for there to be 80 residents, but most residents can't stay on this call till 8:30 at night while they're trying to feed their families or get to and from work. Sorry, I'm just reading through my notes here, just making sure I was getting on. So again, many of the comments were made about the traffic, things like that. One comment I would like to point out is Quiktrip presented their safety measures that they take. When we presented this, when somebody brought up the point about safety, we were not talking about the assets of Quiktrip and providing safety for Quiktrip. I live in Dunes Park, and if a transient individual or some bad individual goes to that gas station, they're not going to commit the crime right there because those cameras are there watching them. They're going to walk into my neighborhood, into my community, and commit the crime, and Quiktrip has nothing to keep us safe. They're protecting their assets, their employees, and their bottom line. And so, again, I apologize for kind of being jumbled here. They have not been listening to us on the fuel station. They continually say that, oh, we have been listening. I will give them credit. They've listened on the housing. They've dropped the height, things like that, on specific housing, but they keep trying to make the point of, we've listened. No, we do not want a fuel station here. This is a great community, and I ask that the city council be good stewards of the community and protect my community from Quiktrip moving in and making this an unfit and unsafe place to live. And my last comment would be, would any of you guys want to live within 100 yards, within a quarter mile of somewhere that has an additional 7,000 trips into a gas station at the entrance to your neighborhood? I appreciate your guys' time. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Does anybody on council have any questions for this speaker? Seeing none, we thank you again for your time. All right, Mr. Foster, rebuttals?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name's Kristen Sullivan. I'm at Foster Graham. I work with David. I wanted to just answer some of the questions to set some context around the concerns and comments we've heard around the US 85 and 112th intersection generally. There's been a number of comments about that. We recognize and understand those concerns. And so I'll answer a little bit about the coordination that's gone on so far to date with the staff as well as with representatives from CDOT to identify those improvements that are listed in the annexation agreement that are in your packet. So those are things that the applicant's already committed to. Those have been worked out with the staff. Those are in part a result of the review of the traffic study, but also they're reflective of all the planning that has been done for the US 85 corridor. Commerce City and many of its partners have been working for many years to improve safety along US 85. The PEL that was referenced earlier is an earlier study. There's been an environmental assessment completed since that date. The PEL was completed in 2017. The environmental assessment was done in 2019. As a result of that, there are intersection improvement recommendations for all of the intersections. One of the major goals of all the partners is to improve the flow of traffic and improve safety at intersections because US 85, of course, is stop controlled, unlike some of the other state highways. So I just wanted you to know that with that larger planning context, those specific improvements that have been identified that the developer will be participating in as a result of the annexation agreement will improve safety significantly at all of the different movements of the interchange. And let me just walk you through what those specifically are. So there are traffic signal upgrades planned for the railroad crossing and 112th Avenue all the way over on the east side of US 85. So those are part of this package. The developer is responsible for 25% of all the improvements that I'm about to list. The traffic signal at US 85 and 112th will be upgraded as well. There will be curb, gutter, and a median installed on 112th. The developer will construct the portion of the 112th median that's adjacent to this site, and then will contribute towards those improvements on the opposite side of US 85. There are improvements to the left turn movements from 112th on to US 85. So right now, those lanes are shared with the through lanes, which causes some of the concerns that you've heard in the comments today. Instead of having dedicated left turn lanes that are outside of the flow of traffic, they're sharing the green light, and that causes some of the backups, and it also reduces safety. So currently, so those are planned as part of this package of improvements as well. Then there are auxiliary lanes, so in helping people merge when they're going southbound, that right turn movement from 112th onto US 85. There will be an extension of that lane and the taper. So currently it's 675 feet plus a 225-foot taper. That will be extended to 960 feet with a 225-foot taper. And then in addition to that acceleration lane, the left lane deceleration lane. So as you're approaching the intersection going northbound on US 85 and you want to turn left on 112th, there's that storage space where you wait for the left turn. And that exists today, but it's not as long as it should be. And so in addition to everything else that I mentioned, that will also be extended to 935 feet with a 225-foot taper. As you've seen on our slides, Florence Street will be built out to city standards. 111th Avenue would be a full build out to city standards. And then the applicant will build its responsibility for Bell Creek Boulevard for a minor collector. I'm going to have our traffic engineer come up and discuss why the four-way stop control was selected in consultation with staff. That's the recommendation of the traffic study. And there are a number of good technical reasons for that. And with all of those other improvements that I described, it was selected that that would be the best way to control that intersection at Florence and 112th. For a couple of reasons, just generally speaking, it provides those operational and safety benefits, and then it also allows for an improved pedestrian crossing for neighborhood connectivity across that street. So a crosswalk can be installed with that intersection control. And so I'll have Jeff come up from Kimley Horn. Jeff Plank completed the traffic study, and he can answer questions and describe why that is the right treatment for that intersection.
Hi, Jeff Plank with Kimley Horn, help prepare the traffic study. So I'm going to just speak to the traffic signal potentially being implemented at 112th Avenue and Florence Street, previously brought up. Essentially, David said the correct answer, but I'll provide a little bit more technical backing. It doesn't meet warrants for signalization. 112th Avenue terminates to the west at Brighton Road, so there's just not enough through demand to meet the warrants for signalization. Beyond, if it did somehow meet warrants for signalization, we brought up examples of spacing. CDOT only allows spacing at 2,640 feet, half-mile spacing. We have to go through a waiver process to even get them at a quarter mile on CDOT. In typical practice, traffic engineering practice, you never go under 660 feet for signal, for the offset, signal timing, vehicle queue issues. So are there circumstances where it's under 660 feet? Yes, we would never support that. 660 is not desirable. Typical practice is half mile or sometimes the quarter mile.
So I'm sure you might have some questions for Jeff. If you have those, he'll obviously remain here. Just in closing, appreciate the time. I think it is notable that after 2.5 years of this project, which I'm sure some of you have heard about over the course of that 2.5 years, It came down to a hearing with 4 people in the neighborhood who came out to speak in opposition, and to their great credit, have acknowledged the work that has gone into this process. And I mean that in all sincerity. I appreciate that they acknowledge that. There was another individual in the neighborhood who, in fact, thought this was an improvement. And Mr. Douglas, I do not think lives in this particular community. All being said, and of course, the letters that you've received from the community as well, I think I'm grateful that this started over, because this is a project that I am very honored to represent in front of City Council tonight. And I've been doing stuff in City Council in Commerce City for over 25 years. So I thank you for your time. If other questions do arise that need the expertise, we'll remain here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Does anybody at this time on council have any questions? Councilmember Noble?
Yes, I'd like to ask about the traffic again. I guess the engineer. The 7,000 car trips, is that figure strictly for the Quiktrip facility, or does that also include all of the residential units that would be on the property?
It is the full development, but I'm going to pull up the numbers for the allocation of both. The gas station's 4,100 of the 7,000.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The gas station's 4,100 of the 7,000. But keep in mind that 75% of the vehicles with the gas station are pass-by, so they would be loaded on 112th Avenue, but that means they're coming from US 85 and they're already on the street network today, so they're not new trips. So only 1,000 of the 4,100 would be new trips.
Yeah, 4,100 a day would be new trips into that area.
No, 3,000 of the trips would be already on US 85 as a trip, pass-by trip, which is considered a trip that is already on the roadway network today. So they're stopping for gas on their way home from work or on their way to work. So they're already on the roadway network to begin with.
They would be turning right or they would be turning left onto 112th in order to get to Quiktrip.
Yes.
There would be 4,100 new cars turning at that intersection.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can you repeat that answer, please? Can you repeat that answer, please?
Yes, so 4,100 trips for the Quiktrip per day and 3,000 for the residential.
Thank you. Councilmember Ford.
You might as well stay up there for a second. I was a little confused with the dialogue on the last question. I thought you said that there was 1,000 new cars, not 4,300. 1,000 new that aren't already on the roadway network going to Quiktrip. Is it 1,000 more or is it 4,000 more?
So 3,000 will be already on US 85 on their way to work or on their way home from work or on their way to some other destination, stopping for the gas and then continuing in the destination that they're originally going. 3,000 doing that. 1,000 would be a trip where the destination was planned to go to the gas station and then back to their original origin.
All right, thank you. I had that same question written down about how many are going to go to the homes, how many to the gas station. What I'd like to know is from the Quiktrip representatives, please, if you wouldn't mind coming up. this is your development. If you don't have fuel, what happens to the commercial development opportunity? Do you guys continue with it? And do you have any other users identified to go in there? And how does that hang on the fuel side of the convenience?
First of all, Mike Talcott, Quiktrip, Councilman Ford, those are big decisions that I don't know the answers to yet. If for some reason the condition was put on there, or if this doesn't get approved by any means, then that's a bigger discussion and decision than we don't know that answer yet.
All right.
And I'm sorry, was another part of the question that I missed?
No, I just was do you have any users for the additional development for the commercial that have been identified? You don't have to tell me who they are. I just want to know what dialogue you're in with other users.
I understand the question now. Do we have any identified? No. Have we had many inquiries from many users? Yes. And that's normal. As you saw, I have over 34 sites in the metro market that are being developed, and the minute they hear we're going somewhere, they reach out. But we don't move forward until we know entitlements. It just cart before the horse.
All right.
So,
thank you.
yep, you're welcome.
And I'd just like to remind everyone too that, again, we're talking about the annexation and zoning, and those are the criteria that we're looking at related to those issues. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Mr. Foster, can I talk to you for a second? Did you guys happen to reach out to the US Highway 85 Authority?
The US 85 Authority?
Anybody talk to them?
Yeah. I'm just not familiar with the US 85 Authority other than CDOT.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Through staff, did our staff talk to the US Highway 85 Authority? And did they have any concerns with this development?
Yes, we worked extensively with CDOT, and they did not provide any objections to the proposal.
All right, well, and I understand CDOT. There is a US Highway 85 Authority in every city between I-76 and the state line on Highway 85. Every city is a member, and every city has a vote. And that's how we were able to get the access on Highway 85 at 104th on the southeast corner to have access to that development, which did not get put in. It's also how Bell Creek got their access on southbound 85 between this site and 104th. However, Highway 85 Authority would have probably had some communication about safety. I'd like to know, based on the improvements, and maybe this is for your traffic guy, based on the improvements, how much safer is Highway 85 from the aspect of what it is today? I live right down the street. I drive on it all the time. I go to that intersection all the time. So from a safety perspective, how much safer with the improvements is that intersection?
So I'm just going to give a little bit of stats first, and then I'll follow up with that.
That's fine.
The national signalized crash rate history for crash rates is 0.78 vehicles per million entering vehicles to an intersection. This intersection has 0.32 crash rate per million entering vehicles. So it's almost 3 times lower than the national crash rate for a signalized intersection. So part of the safety component will be removing the split phasing of the signal, meaning essentially the eastbound approach goes all at once and then the westbound approach goes all at once. So removing the split phasing, the east and westbound approach would be able to go at the same time. That's typical. The implementation of the left turn lanes on the minor approaches would allow for that removal of the split phasing. Because when you have a shared left through, you have to split phase the signal. And split phasing signals are undesirable. So I don't have the stats for how much that would improve, but I do know from a traffic perspective that removing the split phasing of the signal is very desirable.
Thank you. That's all I have for right now.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I have a question for the developer. Yes, thank you. I was just curious, is one of your sites the location also on Central Parkway and East 40th Avenue?
Yes, in Denver.
Yes, because how many resident homes are being built close to that site within a half-a-mile radius from that location?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know. I know there's a new development across Central Park Boulevard that I believe is going to be housing, but I do not know that. We started the entitlement there, well, about a year and a half before construction started. So.
Okay, because the Commerce City location, do you know, are all the residential homes at least a half a mile from where the location of where you guys want to put the gas station? Is there at least a half a mile difference? Because it seems like compared to the location at Central Parkway and East 40th Avenue, the residential homes seem a lot further. So do you know for how far it is at the Commerce City location from where you guys want to put that gas station, how far residential homes will be?
Oh, within our development, ma'am?
Well, the gas station itself, how many miles from the gas station is a residential home currently?
At Central Park Boulevard?
No, the Commerce City location. How many miles from the current residential homes and the gas station, how many miles is a residential home that are already existing to where you guys want to put the gas station?
If I understand correctly, the closest residential homes are across 112th to the north. Is that, yeah, that is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 to 1,000 feet. But at the same time, the site plan has not been fully developed or definitely not approved. So exact placement, I don't know.
So you don't know for sure exactly how many miles a current residential home is compared to where you guys want to put the new gas station?
Correct.
You don't know?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, I hate to do this, but traffic question. So you were speaking to the change to the signal at Highway 85 and 112, getting rid of the current pattern that, one side goes and the other. That's operating under the assumption that there's going to be multiple lanes. We have dedicated turn lanes. Is that going to be the same on the east side of Highway 85?
Correct, yes, there's plans to widen both to implement eastbound left turn lane and a westbound left turn lane.
Yeah, because currently I think the signal is, because of the single lanes, you can't have a turn signal, go at the same time and then the
Correct.
through traffic. And then what other improvements are being made to the Highway 85 acceleration lanes and decel lanes?
So the eastbound to southbound, so eastbound on 112th Avenue to southbound US 85 has an existing acceleration lane. It's built substandard and it's being extended approximately 200 feet to a distance of 960 feet.
And do you know the current traffic count on 112?
Yes. A certain movement or an entire approach?
Just current traffic versus what the new traffic count's going to be after the.
Okay, so average daily traffic volumes keep being brought up with daily volumes on the street, but that's not the typical operational parameters of a traffic study. We're really only concerned with the peak hour because that's where it drives the intersection improvements. So during the peak hour, we have approximately 215 vehicles approaching on 112th Avenue to the signal at US 85.
And what's that count going to be after this development?
Again, while he's looking that up, just remind us to focus on the zoning issue here as
Yeah,
opposed
this is
to
an
the
impact
development.
question.
Approximately 600 vehicles
And that's
in the
total,
peak hour.
total with the existing traffic, or that's additional?
That's total with the existing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, does anybody else on council have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and we'll take a 5-minute recess. All right, everybody is back. We will reconvene. We're going to move on to votes on the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission. I have asked Mr. Baker to show what those findings and recommendations are. They are on your screen there. This time, I'm looking for a motion and a second to accept the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission on case Z-964-21-22. Councilmember Noble. I have a motion to accept the.
So moved.
I have a motion to accept the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission on case Z-964-21-22. Mayor Pro Tem.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to accept the findings and recommendations. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble.
My concern on the PUD is, and the zoning, is that in addressing a unique situation, confers a substantial benefit to the city or incorporates creative site design, et cetera. There is also, this may include but is not limited to improvements and efficient provision of streets, roads, and other utilities and services. I am very concerned about the street and road situation involving the ingress and egress for what has been a residential area on either side for Bell Creek and Dunes Park. So that is why I made the motion.
Councilmember Hurst.
I think the comments that we received over the course of this process have been really good. My problem, as with a lot of things that we come with, is sure feels like we're changing the rules again in the middle of the game. When the PUD approves that it has that use type approved, when the property went for sale and was transferred during the purchase process, that's when we had the opportunity to change the rules. Once it's done, I don't feel like we do. And so again, you know, taking fuel sales out when fuel sale is clearly approved in a PUD that it was currently living under, just doesn't seem like a viable solution.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, have a motion and a second to accept the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission on case Z-964-21-22. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
What's that?
I have council members Noble and Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas as ayes to that. Are you an aye or a nay, Mayor
I
Houston?
believe Councilmember Douglas is also an aye.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So
All right.
3?
So we are 3-6.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. One second while I consult my handy cheat sheet here. Okay. All right, annexation eligibility. Looking for a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2022-30 determining eligibility for the annexation. Councilmember Ford? Councilmember Grimes?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2022-30 determining eligibility for the annexation. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request, Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, I wanted to save the discussion about traffic from my personal opinion for this stage of the conversation. There wasn't questions. You know, if we break down Highway 85, and I promise this will be quick, from I-76 to Highway 7, so the interchange, so that's milepost 226 to 235. On average, every day, there's 33,000 to 36,000 cars, including trucks, on that route. 7.1 to 8.8% of those are trucks, which is equivalent to 4,320. And really, when you start diving into some of the traffic issues, I work with traffic engineers on a daily basis. The center median design, I do agree with some of the comments. There's plenty of people that jump center medians that are designed with a normal 5 to 6 inch curb. Most cars, even smaller cars, can make that. But a simple design that leads up to even 10 inches that comes to a peak and still does the appropriate drainage work would eliminate that. You would high center on it, and it would be one of the quickest fixes that I can think of, and it would eliminate any crossover there. The traffic light timing would absolutely improve at 112th and Highway 85. The increased traffic would justify a much quicker change in, a much longer green light for those traveling east to west or west to east. We already did the 7,000 trips are for the whole property, and suggesting that any restaurant or commercial space wouldn't do the same thing that a gas station would, just maybe not to the same exact equivalent numbers, but would also create the same type of parking challenges, lighting challenges, and general traffic increases. So to me, the other thing that you can find also through the traffic data that's posted as public record online, that the Highway 85 crash frequency is not rising, is actually flatlined or even declining, and that is frequency, crash frequency. So yes, there are still crashes happening, and they're still happening at the rate they have been happening at, but they are not increasing with additional traffic on there. And so to me, changing fuel sales, like where we're not approving that, but we're going to approve the rest of the property, seems like, telling a property owner they can build a house, but they can't build a driveway or a garage. It just doesn't seem like that's even what we're talking about here. So the position on annexation that revolved around, traffic, a first or second year traffic engineer could solve all of these in a pretty quick manner.
Okay, once again, I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2022-30, determining the eligibility for annexation. Mr. Gibson, would you please read the title?
Yes, sir. Resolution 2022-30, a resolution determining the eligibility for annexation of the City of Commerce City, Colorado, of the property located generally at 9940 East 112th Avenue, Henderson, Colorado, in case AN 259-2122, known as the Can-Am annexation.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Councilmember Douglas? You're an aye? Okay, thank you. It's going to pass 7-2. All right, annexation approval. Looking for a motion and a second to introduce by council as seated and approve on first reading ordinance AN-259-21-22. Councilmember Grimes?
So moved.
Councilmember Madera?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to introduce by council as seated and approve on first reading ordinance AN-259-21-22. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Douglas?
May I clarify that this is still on annexation? Is that correct?
It is ordinance AN-259-21-22, so it would be on the annexation.
Thank you.
Seeing no other requests for discussion, Mr. Gibson, would you please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance AN 259-2122, an ordinance annexing the property generally located at 9940 East 112th Avenue, Henderson, Colorado, to the City of Commerce City, Colorado, in case AN 259-2122, known as the Can-Am annexation. Your vote is open.
And motion is going to pass 7-2. Next up, looking for a motion and a second to introduce by council as seated and approve on first reading ordinance Z-964-21-22. Councilmember Grimes.
So moved.
Councilmember Madera.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to introduce by council as seated and approve on first reading ordinance Z-964-21-22. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, I still need to clarify, is this on annexation?
This is on zoning, ordinance Z-964-21-22.
Thank you.
My biggest issue with this is that intersection at Florence and 112th. And I struggle with the idea that a crosswalk protected by stop signs across 112th Avenue with the amount of people that would be coming southbound off of US 85 onto westbound 112th and needing to make a turn, and the concern of backing up to the intersection of 85. I'm concerned with the amount of traffic coming out of the dunes needing to make a turn, both west and east onto 112th, in dealing with the additional traffic. So I would actually like to see that the public improvement agreement require that traffic light be installed at 112th and Florence. So my motion is to amend the ordinance Z-964-21-22 to require a traffic light to be installed at that intersection as a condition of approval. Okay, there, Councilmember Madera,
You need a second?
if you wanted to.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to amend ordinance Z-964-21-22, requiring a public improvement agreement that would specify a traffic light must be installed at the intersection of Florence and 112th Avenue. Yes, Mr. Rogers?
Just so that, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the motion. I just want to make sure that as you all are taking this into consideration as to whatever action that you all take, obviously we can stipulate that within a public improvement agreement, and Mr. Hoydell, who's more in tune with CDOT's inner workings through their variance application because of the distance between Florence and 85. With that stipulation, we may or may not be able to control the actual installation of that. And if that does not, if we're not allowed to construct that signalization, then what is the fallback I would then ask of this council as it relates to this condition? Because it may be one that we may not be able to enforce, which then puts us in a gray area.
Thank you, appreciate that. I would say that if CDOT says no, we can't have a traffic light, then we can't have a traffic light and we get a four-way stop sign. But I would like every effort to be exhausted in order to get that traffic light installed there, because I think that's the right thing to do whenever you consider this kind of thing. And again, we can talk distances, but whenever Bell Creek to 85 on 104th is only 517 feet, and it's approximately 661 feet on 112th, I don't see why one would be allowed and another would not. However, I'm not the decision maker at CDOT, so I would leave it to those experts. Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, I'd like to say, I support that, and from an effort standpoint, because I hear what Jason's saying, that we might not have the final say, but if you would be, I mean, he's obviously suggesting an amendment kind of to what happens if not. My request would be that we go above and beyond the traffic stop, or the stop sign, four-way stop sign, and ask for recommendations to be put in front of us that goes above and beyond that, whether one is a stoplight and then other traffic scenarios, I don't want to say it out loud because it's a bad word, but roundabouts.
What I would recommend, Mayor, just so that we're able to kind of connect the dots, follow the breadcrumbs back to where the originating request was, that we would draft a condition for your consideration prior to second reading that be included as part of the zoning document. We just spoke with the counsel of the applicant. They would be willing to have that consideration as part of the zoning application. Once again, that way it allows for us to be able to point back to something requiring a future action.
Okay. I'm okay with that. Back to, I want to address your question if we don't get the traffic light. I don't think that just 4 stop signs mounted on posts would be enough. I would think that rapid flashing beacons for crossing 112th Avenue would be a requirement, as well as any other modifications to make a 4-way stop sign intersection be as safe as possible. Maybe even those nice little lights that go up above that tell people that there's people crossing the... Anyways.
So one thing what we will do, sir, is we'll make sure to include the primary request and obviously some other alternatives to that point, so that way, like I said, we are turning over every rock as we possibly can with respect to that intersection.
Okay. So motion and a second is to require this document to be drafted before second reading.
So my understanding right now is we have a motion and a second to amend the pending zoning ordinance to add a new condition that a traffic light be constructed at 112th and Florence, conditioned on CDOT approval. And if denied, then the installation of other pedestrian safety implements or appurtenances, such as those items you mentioned. So that's my understanding of what we're looking at right now, and we can tidy that up on second reading, but we need to have it here as well.
Thank you, sir. And just to clarify that this vote that we are about to do via voice vote is not approval of the ordinance for zoning. It is just on the amendment, putting that stipulation out there. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion will carry unanimously. We will now move on to the vote on ordinance Z-964-21-22. I have a motion and a second. Seeing no other request for discussion, Mr. Gibson, will you please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance Z-964-2122, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and zoning map of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by zoning the property annexed as Can-Am from Adams County I-1 and Commerce City I-1 to Commerce City PUD Planned Unit Development and approving a zone document as amended. Your vote is open. Councilmember Davis. Thank you.
All right, the motion is introduced by council as seated and approved on first reading with a vote of 6-3. Now move on to administrative council business per council policy. Except for emergency or unforeseen items, council members are encouraged to submit administrative business items by the Tuesday before the meeting with another council member's endorsement. Do any council members have administrative business items of an urgent or unforeseen circumstance? Councilmember Noble.
Yes, thank you very much. I do have a motion that I placed before everyone. This motion was submitted by the deadline on Tuesday with a seconder. However, it did not make this agenda. So I am doing it during administrative council business. You'll see it is a change to council options for keeping informed. And I worked with the city attorney on this language. Number 1 is the one that I was concerned about. And number 2 is a modification that Mr. Hayter is requesting. So number 1 and number 2, which are highlighted and in italics, and I'll read them. Council members are encouraged to use appropriate means to keep informed, including the leveraging of technology for this purpose. Appropriate means may include, but shall not be limited to, media, recordings, minutes, and notes in order to find out what is being considered by a committee or commission. And number 2, council members may review available materials on planning-related items subject to appropriate materials that are part of the record in land use cases. And that is my motion.
I have a motion to amend Council Policy 2 as specified in the document in front of all of you and read by Councilmember Noble. Is there a second? Councilmember Douglas?
I'll second that, please.
I have a motion and a second to amend Council Policy 2. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Madera.
I just have a question, what we're changing this from, and, what the actual amendments are doing, kind of in layman's terms.
Councilmember Madera, this just brings us up to speed in terms of technology advances. Our CP2 only referred to written materials, and we now also have other materials we use also, whether it's Zoom meetings or other kinds of digital means or recordings. Whatever is used within the context of a public meeting would be also available to the council member to listen to and inform themselves. Correct, Mr. Hayter?
Yeah, in my discussion with Councilmember Noble, the gist of the issue was there are meetings in which things are recorded, and technically it's inconsistent. At least my reading would be that it's inconsistent with that council policy for another council member to review that recording as a means to keep up to speed with what's going on with that particular committee or commission. So the language that Councilmember Noble has put forward expands the means or the tools or available to you to get up to speed with what's happening with other commissions. Those things that are available to you, such as a recording of a meeting as well.
And that's for all council members, whether you're on the committee or not.
Is that for, us to review committees that we're not on? Is that the intent of this?
I think that's the intent of Council Policy 2, is to make sure that you can stay informed as to what's happening in other commissions and committees. And basically the way it reads now is, you read the minutes and the documents and that's it. And this just kind of expands the availability of, or expands the tools that are available to you to stay up to speed with what's happening at those other committees or commissions.
So kind of like a after the fact thing, if you don't watch the meeting live when it's taking place? Because these are public meetings.
Sure, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question about the second amendment addition. Well, more clarification. If we have materials made available prior to land use cases hearings, I would just want to make sure that precludes council from being involved in staff's day-to-day actions. Meaning, if you have access to that material sorry, my mic is really loud, sorry. If you have access to that material ahead of when it would normally be given to us for a land use case, I just want to make sure that council is not getting in the middle of staff's work.
The goal with the change with reference to land use cases was to make sure that you're sticking to the record before you for land use cases. So you're not bringing in extraneous materials or other things that are provided or that basically, yeah, you can figure out what's going on with other commissions and committees. But with Planning Commission, there's a record that's developed and then it comes to you, and that's what you need to stick to. So the goal was stick to the record.
Okay. I'm not sure I read it that way.
Okay. I don't have a copy in front of me. And I don't know where it went, but let me pull that up and take a look at it too.
Councilmember Hurst.
I guess my one follow-up to that is, it says subject to appropriate materials that are part of the record in land use cases. And I think tonight was a good example. Public knowledge or public record that's accessible to everybody with no login. When we start talking about traffic, how does that play into it? Because what if I had that memorized? I mean, could I not, if it's my prior knowledge to the discussion, could I not reference it?
Well, the concern is, you know, you're supposed to be developing the facts at trial, and well, you're not a witness, right? So you have personal knowledge of items, but having, you know, soliciting that information from a witness is really what you want to do to get that information in the record, because your decision is based on the record before you, and those facts and reasonable inferences drawn from those, you know, from the testimony at the hearing. So, because the F2 addressed planning-related items as opposed to planning cases and actual cases that are coming before you, that's why the addition was made to say subject to those, you know, appropriate materials that are part of the record in land use cases, to take it from planning-related items to land use cases, to make sure that in land use cases, you're only looking at the appropriate record. So you're not looking for extraneous items to bring in to get you up to speed on what's happening in that planning item.
Sure. All right, I'm just trying to get clarification because we're going deeper into every traffic study, which I think is not a bad thing if we want to dive into it. But if we're going deeper, you have to kind of go back to where that information starts. And that's, so I don't know if we can request that traffic, you know, general traffic information that's provided, you know, that's public information provided for the area may be considered. But I know that's tonight was pretty unique because Highway 85 being the cross street is not the norm in most situations. You know, it's probably less than 10% that we're talking about a high-density state highway. So it's just in those scenarios, I almost believe that we have to bring in that outside traffic information because the traffic study is kind of dependent on that regional traffic information, if you will. So the clarification really is what public information is also available. I think you answered it. Thanks.
Councilmember Grimes?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification, and I think I may be misreading it or misunderstanding F2. Isn't that information already available to council?
What information?
Available materials on planning-related items?
So, you know, to me, when I read this policy, it basically authorizes you appropriately to review whatever materials are available on planning-related items. My concern is if it is a land use hearing, that what you have to review is the record and not whatever may be available. So the record is what I'm trying to limit you to, because that's what you have to base your decision on. That's what the public receives. That's what, you know, we have public notice of. That's what an appellate body would review, is whether you based your opinion on the record. If you reach outside the record, then the soundness of your decision can certainly be attacked. So that was, again, the goal there, was to try to make sure that in land use cases, you're not reaching out for things that, you know, outside of the process, you know, just like you're, you know, instructed to not go do site visits at things, you know, it's the record is what's before you. So that's all we're trying to do there, is make sure that as we expand the materials that are available to you, that in a land use case, you're still confining yourself to the record.
Councilmember Noble?
Thank you. If I could help here on this number 2, it originally read, council members may read documents on planning-related items. That's all it said in the council policies. And again, this is Mr. Hayter's request. If you want to bifurcate these, I'd be happy to do that too.
But keep in mind, it's not anything I initiated. You know, this was because number one was expanding. We looked at how that could be impacting number two, and we're just trying to make sure that it was reasonable and appropriate.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to amend council policy number 2 with the proposed changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously 9-0. Councilmember Noble, did you have any other administrative council business items?
Yes, I do. And this one would be in the category of urgent or emergency. Under the study session, I'm looking at the city council work schedule again. Under study session for May 23rd, it shows board and commission term limit discussion. This topic was before the board and commissions committee, and it was a 4-0 vote to bring our recommendations forward. So I am making a motion to move board and commission term limits to the special meeting on May 23rd as an item to vote on.
I have a motion to add to the May 23rd special meeting agenda a conversation on board and commission term limits. Is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem?
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to add that to the May 23rd special meeting agenda. Mr. Gibson?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let council know, Deputy City Clerk Jordan Roberts has been leading this project with the Board and Commission Subcommittee, as you may know. He will be out of town on Monday. I'm happy to make the presentation, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna have all the context and background materials. I want to make sure council has the full picture whenever they make a full decision. Happy to do it on the 23rd if council so chooses. Otherwise, we can schedule it for the next available study session. I don't want to delay it, but I also want to give it the time and attention it deserves.
I'm not doing it for a study session, though. I'm moving it to a meeting for a vote.
Councilmember Hurst?
Yes, I've had a brief conversation with Councilwoman Noble about this, and I support her action. I really think the four of us that are on the Boards and Commission Committee have had this discussion without any, that everybody was in 100% support, similar to all the people that we've talked to on the boards and commissions. It's really in an effort to try to get as many people in the city involved, try to see that turnover and not, hopefully not allow somebody to be the chair for, eternity, basically. So it's something we've been talking about for several months, I feel like, at the very least. And so I do think it is time. And the reason I agree with Councilwoman Noble that it doesn't need to go to a study session is because of the lack of any, pushback that we've seen. And we think we could probably explain ourselves in 5 minutes or less and get everybody to recognize what the intent is.
Councilmember Madera?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the term limits and anything that's being discussed. I guess my question is, does this give rise to, something that's an emergency that needs to be done in a special meeting next week that's already going to be pretty dense with other matters, or can we move this to a regularly scheduled meeting?
That's fine too, because I was trying to take it off of the agenda for the study session and move it to an actual vote. So either on the 23rd or on June 6th, but not for ongoing discussion other than during deliberations. But we don't really know what's happening for a special meeting because we don't have a special meeting approved anyway on the 23rd, so
We do have a special meeting approved on the 23rd, and it is a very full agenda that will be very difficult for us to get accomplished in our 4.5-hour time limit, so.
All right, let's move it to June 6th then.
So now your motion is to have it on June 6th?
That'll be fine. Yes, my motion is to
Mayor
have it
Pro
on
Tem?
June 6th.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to have the conversation and vote potential on term limits for our boards and commissions be placed on the June 6th regular scheduled city council agenda. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor?
That Mr. Roberts can help prepare the ordinance because we discussed what our suggested term limits were.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Was that the end of your administrative council business, Councilmember Noble?
I have, oopsie, I'm sorry, let me look at my notes. My apologies. I did want to know what the status is of the police chief investigation.
So you're all aware that I retained special counsel to help finish up that investigation. That investigation from special counsel was completed last week, and I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday of last week that I then provided that report to City Manager Tinklenberg.
When does the city council receive it?
Honestly, I don't know yet. I'm trying to give city manager time to review that and take any action he might deem appropriate. It is important to me to get it to you as expeditiously as I can, but I want to make sure that I want to avoid any potential for interference in any actions that the city manager may have to take in response to his receipt of that report.
Okay, thank you. I have one more. I had a complaint from a resident who lives across from Frontera Village, from Frontera Park today, and he believes that there isn't regular watering and maintenance going on at Frontera Park, and he's quite concerned. He was on the Parks, Recreation, and Golf Committee for 3 years, and he has spoken to some of the workers, and they said that they are not being assigned to do that. They're being assigned to remove graffiti from the skate park, that kind of thing, but not to do any other kind of maintenance or watering, and that the turf is dying, and he's afraid that the cost of repairs are going to be more than if we would be keeping it up right now. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst.
I'll piggyback quickly. Scott needs to be thatched. It's basically, there's water every night. Trust me, I get wet every single night when I walk in the park, but it's watering like grass that is completely laid down dead on itself. And so really like thatching would probably do the job. But I do agree there's huge patches of dead spots that need that type of treatment on it because the sprinklers do spray the entire concrete walking path on a nightly basis because I come home with wet feet and a wet dog.
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, and I put this on the city manager's action items already, so hopefully they'll be getting back to us on that because the park by my house is completely dead and has 2-foot weeds. They haven't been watering that one. I've never gotten wet, so I think this is kind of an issue throughout the city that we need to take a look at because it's going to be a lot more expensive to replace all that turf and landscaping, rather than maintaining it.
All right, does any other council member have administrative council business they need to bring up? Seeing none, we will move on to reports. Acting City Manager Blakeman.
Thank you. Just have a couple of items for you. Community Development has reported 177 active entitlement applications. 461 residential permits have been submitted year to date, and 447 residential permits have been issued to date, also in 2022. Within Public Works, they have stated that the I-270 and Vasquez improvements, staff did submit a grant application to Perlmutter's office in April. They sound like they're very interested in it and supporting it, and that they will be submitting it, that project, into the congressional budget process. So more to come on that. And then with PRG, staff has submitted an Adams County Open Space Grant for Second Creek Farm Neighborhood Park. And staff is going to make that same application request for the Buffalo Highlands Oasis project once we have additional details as it pertains to the design being vetted out. And lastly, I'd like for you to be aware that IT has done a reset, so to speak, of the sound that's in here. I've noticed that Councilmember Grimes, this one have a bit of an echo, a very large echo. But any other feedback that you have, we'd love to hear what that is. You can just send me an email, and then we'll make sure that it gets over to Justin Bingham in IT. And that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody on council have any questions for the acting city manager? Seeing none, we'll move on to interim city attorney Matt Hayter.
I'll be brief. I think that the city attorney posting, I know it's open right now. I believe it's set to close either maybe this weekend or the beginning of next week. And hopefully the Human Resources will have, I have no idea what they've received so far, but hopefully they'll have some good recipients or some good applicants for everyone to review. That being said, last week, Mr. Brian Swan, who is one of the attorneys in our office, submitted his resignation. So that will become effective on May 25th. So we immediately posted to fill that position as well. And I'm also, I've been sending out more things to outside counsel, and I'm looking to bring in possibly a temp as well to try to keep things moving so we don't fall too far behind. So the city attorney's office right now is a little stressed with regard to workload and manpower, but we're trying to get through the best we can and continue to support the different departments and divisions within the city, as well as the 9 of you sitting up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayter. Does anybody on council have any questions for the interim city attorney? Seeing none, do any council members wish to make a report? Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, I had the pleasure of attending the Adams County Open Space Grant Awards and received just shy of $1 million for Commerce City. They did it as a breakfast this year. It was a really nice welcome back from the previous year's kind of hiatus. And I would encourage everyone to attend next year if you're able to. I also attended Rotary last week. They are preparing for their what used to be an annual sporting clay shoot, and so I think you'll hear about this more from Councilmember Ford, so I'll let him give the details. And then lastly, Housing Authority met last week as well, short meeting and not much to report back.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes, Commerce City Rotary Club every year. They didn't have it last year because of COVID, but we are going to kick off our annual, it was always called a 50-50 trap and sport shoot. This year, it will only be sporting clays, 100 rounds of sporting clays. There will be no trap, so we could encourage more people to participate. I'm asking for sponsorship from the council to support this. The money from this goes towards the scholarships that if any of you went to the Adams 14 Foundation, 3 of those scholarships were funded by the Rotary Club. That's where this money goes. It also goes to our Heart and Soul program, which funds shoes for kids at Christmas time in our community that are in the Adams 14 district. So respectfully requesting a sponsorship from the city. And you all have that in front of you with the sponsorship amounts. None of that has changed. But we are going to make a new flyer that will say sporting clay event rather than the trap. Thank you.
Councilmember Noble?
I attended the Airport Coordinating Committee meeting last week. Most of the meeting was focused upon Denver's lack of participation in financially in the marketing plan, in not meeting the commitment that all of the cities made that are part of the Airport Coordinating Committee. We have all of the other cities and county have provided their share that's due for the marketing. They are now being sent a letter. They are apparently going to take it before the city council for procurement, but you may recall we voted on our money and moved our money forward last year. So we're still waiting on that, and I know that everybody this time was very anxious to move forward.
Councilmember Davis, you have a report to make?
Yes. I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting last week. Their lion's share of what they spoke about was the success of their Derby event for the Kentucky Derby. For those of you who weren't aware of how it worked, they sold funny money and you got to bet that on the horses. And since the surprise horse won the Kentucky Derby, nobody won first place and nobody won the trifecta or the quadrifecta. They do plan on doing another one next year, bigger, better, bolder. They did donate money towards the Rotary Club event. In fact, the only reason they did was because they talked somebody into going and shooting with them, and who then drugged the other people along. But did attend that, very well attended. They are gung-ho, and they've got a couple other things they want to discuss with the city coming up here before long, and we'll discuss that at that time.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. I attended the Youth Commission meeting, and they had food again, so it was well attended. And they are going to have a float in the Memorial Day Parade, so I'm excited about that. And we'll be meeting again on Thursday before the parade, so we'll be showing that up. And so it was great to have the new liaison or coordinator. I don't know what her title is. Jenny, I know that's her first name. I can't remember her last name. But really excited to have her on board. She seems like a really good fit, and encouraging her to move to Commerce City. So I also was invited to go on a walking tour on 74th with the CDOT crew. And it was really interesting, talking about putting in sidewalks and curb and gutter, and they got to see how bad the road was that day, as well as how the crosswalks didn't work with the lights. So that was really, really good to have them come out and actually walk that street to see what the problems are and how we can solve them. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Noble?
I'm sorry, I forgot something that was really important, and that was to thank Justin Bingham and his team for all the work that they have been putting in over the past few months, trying to figure out a way for me to be able to hear at city council meetings. I am hard of hearing. I do wear hearing aids, and it has been a challenge. And people may have noticed sometimes I don't actually hear everything that's going on, particularly when someone is speaking to me. I think we have finally found the answer. I have a separate way of hearing from everyone else, but they did, as was pointed out, they did tune up the room as well. But I do want to thank IT. It's been really remarkable, and I appreciate having heard the meeting. Means a lot. Thank you.
All right, that concludes reports. Prior to adjourn, we're going to go back to administrative council business. Make a motion that the City of Commerce City sponsor the Rotary Trap Tournament in the amount of $1,500 for the What the Shell sponsorship level. Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for the city council to sponsor that in the amount of $1,500. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. That is the final thing we have to do tonight. So we are adjourned. We'll see you next week for a special meeting. Have a good night. Have a good week.